at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go ahead and start the workshop regarding the proposed ethics package before the Tallahassee City Commission. First and foremost, Mr. City Manager, do we have any agenda modifications?
No, sir, no modifications.
Okay, we're going to go straight into, we got a healthy crowd here today. We're going to go straight into citizen input. I ask you to please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We'll probably have a lot of testimony this morning. And as always, I ask for civility, and let's set the example of how things are supposed to be done. The Mayor Pro Tem will be here shortly, but we're going to go ahead and start because we do have a supermajority quorum. Before we start as well, let me go ahead and give some public comment. I see the chairman of the Ethics Board and other members of the Ethics Board that are here as well. And I want to personally thank you for a job well done, sending your recommendations to us. I know that you all have worked extremely hard on this package. And I appreciate it. And I had a chance to speak to both the chairman and Mr. Payne. And if there are any other members that are here as well, I think I speak on behalf of the commission. We appreciate the hard work that y'all did putting this package together for our consideration. With that, Mr. Clerk, why don't we move forward with public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. We obviously do have a number of speakers. The first will be Ronald Burnett and then Benjamin Pye. Speakers and Mr. Burnett can go ahead and approach the microphone here in the middle of the room. You will each have 3 minutes for your remarks. I'll give you a heads up at about 2.5, and then I'm assuming in the interest of time, the mayor will let you know strongly when it's 3. If you would give your name and address for the record, I'll start your time.
Mr. Burnett, good morning.
My name is Ronald Burnett. My address is 3519 Sunnyside Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. I'm here to stand before you to address an issue that's on my mind. I'd like to take this time by starting out to define 4 words and speak to their correlation and relationship to the City of Tallahassee. 4 words are organization, people, communications, and STAR. Organization. An organization is an association of people having a common interest. People, human beings making up a group or linked by common interests or value. Communication, an exchange of information and opinion. Star, a celestial body that appears as a fixed point of light, also meaning light, celebrity, somebody, standout, and superstar. Our organization is comprised of 2 main components: the City Commission, led by the Mayor, and Office of the City Manager, with each having a vision, a mission, a critical factor, and values, all fostering and working for the good of the total population of the City of Tallahassee, not just catering to a minority or subset. All officials, elected and appointed, are bound by a code of public trust, ethical behavior, providing exceptional service, leading with integrity, collaborating to reach common goals, investing in employee excellence, and promoting equality and diversity. Everything I just alluded to, you all already know. But did you know that as the leadership goes, so do its workers? If there is confusion in your offices, or when we see or hear negative news in the media, the press is affected. It affects the workers as much. It's not more than it does you. That's because we are being asked about a situation by other co-workers, friends, family, and the general public. Most of the time we don't have an answer, and the other time we just don't want to answer because we're too ashamed. In either case, it reduces the morale and the productivity of the workers in the workforce. The words describing these feelings and action is esprit de corps. Esprit de corps is a French word meaning a feeling of pride, fellowship, and common loyalty shared by members of a particular group. People. People are the employees. We take pride in our fellowship and shared values. We find joy when a group is recognized for something good, and yet sadness when it's recognized in a negative way of light. This affects our resourcefulness, our performance, and our productivity. As loyal, hardworking, dedicated employees, we shouldn't have to find out from social media the news or a press release is that there's an issue between the commission and city manager's office. In-house,
You're
through
at 3 minutes.
communication and open dialogue, this problem shouldn't have to have been addressed or solved, yet it wasn't. In court, a man is innocent until proven guilty. Yet each man or woman who has a problem or issue with another should sit down and through open dialogue address the problem or issue. At that point, should satisfaction not be reached, the next step would be through the chain of command and the ethics officer, etc. Or police.
Mr. Burnett, thank you so much. I'm sorry I have to cut you off. Thank you for coming out today.
Okay, and I stand in support of our city manager.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next speaker is Benjamin Pye, then Catherine Bear.
Mr. Pye, good to see you. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Benjamin Pye. I live at 4547 Desmond Court here in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm a city employee. I'm a supervisor on the night shift from 5 o'clock to 1 in the morning. And I'm up here to speak on behalf of our great city manager, Mr. Reese Gold. I probably know Mr. Reese Gold better than pretty much anyone in here because I'm in his office every night. And
No taking.
and I've been here from the first day he started up until the present time. He has not changed one bit. He's a very, very, very open person. His door is always open. He is always caring and trying to support the city of Tallahassee. And when I talk to him at night when he be in his office working and everything, I said, man, it's time for you to go home. Look what time it is. He said, I got to try to move Tallahassee forward. I got to stay here and get it done, Ben. I said, all right, then I'm going to leave you alone, and I go on about my business. But I just want everyone to know that you all are talking about a man, and I'm talking about a man who is very ethical, who has a lot of integrity and a lot of character to go along with that. And I'm going to give you a short example because I only have 3 minutes. But I lost my father about 6 months ago. And I was very surprised when I looked up at the funeral home and I seen every assistant city manager and the deputy city manager and the people in the funeral home. I didn't ask them to come. They came on their own. And then that Saturday when they funeralized my father, I'm sitting up on the first row trying to console my mother and the rest of my family members, and I just happened to glance over to my right, and guess what? I seen City Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, and I seen City Manager Reese Gold at my daddy's funeral. And after the funeral was over with, Mr. Gold climbed up in the family car and consoled my mother and my sister. I say, I mean, no one has never did that before. I don't know anyone has ever did that before. I mean, that really, really touched my heart and my family. My mother told me to tell you she's praying for you and she loves you. And my sister Melvine, who taught his daughter at Kate Sullivan School, she retired after 35 years, but she was his daughter teacher. And he often tell me that his daughter always ask about, you know, how she's doing and et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to say Mr. Reese Gold is a great man. He's a friendly man. And I think we have a great staff here at City Hall, from the commissioners to the city managers, the assistant city managers, and I hope that everyone will realize that because we are trying to move Tallahassee forward, and you can see what he's doing. He don't want a spotlight on him. He do things, but, you know, he don't have a spotlight on him. And I like that. You don't see him in the paper all the time trying to take credit for everything that's going on. But you know he worked for Habitat for Humanity. He be out there. I seen him about 3 weeks ago. He came in looking like he had been sleeping in the woods. I said, where you been at, man? He said, man, I've been out working with the crew today. I've been cutting grass and weed eating. And that's the kind of city manager we got. We got someone that loves his job, and I just want to speak in behalf of him. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, sir.
Catherine Bear, followed by Henry Swift.
I will try to keep it at 3 minutes. We are actually here to speak about ethics. We are Citizens for Ethics Reform, an independent, nonpartisan organization of unpaid volunteers. We have watched and worked with the Ethics Board on providing proposals for ordinances which are strong yet fair. They are stronger than the state ethics code, and that is by design. When you were candidates for office in the last election, we spoke with you about providing our specific recommendations for making the ethics ordinances stronger. We were given full assurances that you approved of our recommendations and hope that you will honor these assurances you readily gave us as candidates. Since I only have 3 minutes to address 20 pages of proposed language, as well as the recommendations made by the mayor and the city attorney, we have broken the topics up among the four of us in an attempt to address as many of these as possible. Misuse of position. This is an extremely important issue that's been brought before the City Commission by the Ethics Board multiple times. They have recommended misuse of position apply to all public officials and city employees in order to comply with the charter language, as well as lowering the burden of proof from the state standard of corruptly to knew or should have known. The Florida Commission on Ethics has been fighting for a lower burden of proof for quite some time. Additionally, a statewide grand jury said that the use of the word corruptly, that used to be the standard in criminal violations, created prosecutorial problems and made it easier for public officials to get off. In comparison, the city of Jacksonville uses intentional standard and Palm Beach County uses known or should have known, but also includes corrupt language in regards to misuse of official position. Vendor disclosure. We fully support Commissioner Matlow's recommendation that vendors be required to disclose campaign contributions made to candidates. The disclosure of offer. That recommendation would require covered individuals called, all those in the charter, to report to the Ethics Board and City Attorney any offer made to the individual to influence the vote, official action, or judgment of the covered individual. This action should be reported for the simple reason if a person, a non-covered individual, is going to attempt to bribe one person, they will attempt to bribe others once that bribe is turned down. So that does need to be extended to non-covered individuals. We also applaud the mayor and Commissioner Matlow for their position regarding zero gift ban, and we hope that you will include that language in there. Finally, in 2014, during the Village Square Forum, I participated in a debate over the proposed ethics charter amendment. I was on one side along with Peter and Marilyn. Who appeared for the opposition? Michael Sittig, head of the Florida League of Cities, which fought Governor Askew every step of the way against the Sunshine Amendment, its implementation, and particularly its provisions against municipal corruption.
You're about 245.
And who was on the other side that opposed the amendment? Scott Maddox. Which side are you on?
What does that have to do with it?
Next speaker is Henry Swift, and then Marilyn Wills.
Mr. Swift, good to see you, sir.
Hello, sir. My name is Henry Swift. I live on Lavinia Drive in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm a retired city employee and a retired professional engineer. I worked on a project, a smart meter project here at the city for about 5 years, supervised by Mr. Goad. It was a great accomplishment for me, for my career. We affected every single customer in the city, replaced 220,000 meters over the period of time that we were working on the project, affected every single customer. And at the beginning of the project, Mr. Goad directly supervised me. We met every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, to get the project up and running. And as the project went by, as I got my sea legs and the project took off, excuse me, he decreased his involvement in my day-to-day activities, which was what I had been accustomed to with other supervisors in other places that I had worked. I worked at 8 or 10 different companies in my career, 20 or so supervisors, and Mr. Goad provided the kind of supervision that I needed, the kind of direction that I needed to pull off what I think was a very complicated project, and it came off without any problems, and we came in under budget. I highly recommend that Mr. Goad stay in his position. I think he's a great attribute for the city, and it was a pleasure to work for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next speaker is Marilyn Wills, and then Antonio Jackson.
Ms. Wills, thank you so much for joining us.
Today, lobby registration is done in the Treasurer Clerk's office, and that's it. There are no regulations regarding failure to register or contact logs to indicate which commissioners or employees the lobbyist is meeting with or what is to be discussed. So how do we know if people are lobbying the commission or procurement employees but are not registered as lobbyists? The referendum amending the city charter, which was passed by 67% of the vote, states that the Ethics Board shall recommend proposed ordinances in several areas, including lobbying. The Ethics Board has recommended fining persons who do not register $1,000 for the first violation, $2,500 for a second violation within a 3-year period, and $5,000 for a third violation during any 3-year period. If a lobbyist commits a fourth violation, said lobbyist would be suspended from lobbying for a period of time not to exceed 3 years. While the city attorney thinks the fine should be lowered, most of these lobbyists are representing companies that need to feel the pinch, and lower fines will not make this happen. If a lobbyist cannot afford to pay the fine, then he or she should not violate the ordinance. It was surprising to me that lobby regulations were so low, since the ethics panel that the city appointed in 2013 recommended daily monetary penalties for failure to comply and barring lobbyists from meeting with commission members until they are registered and all fines are paid. Since there are no penalties in place now, there are probably lobbyists who don't register. In Broward County, a contact log is kept in each office, and lobbyists must sign in whenever they lobby a commissioner or employee. In Miami-Dade, failure to file the forms can be considered in evaluating a bid as evidence that the bidder is not a responsible contractor. In all the Florida counties where there is an ethics board, it is the norm for the board to be involved in monitoring lobbying activities. The ethics board has also recommended that city contractors at a certain level of procurement be subject to the ethics code. While the city attorney does not agree, the amendment specifically states that the ethics board shall have the authority to recommend proposed ordinances to the city commission in all areas of ethics and corruption, including ethics in procurement.
You're at 2.5.
Pardon me?
You're at 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. One other point is the Ethics Board's proposal to prohibit acceptance of any gift of any value by covered individuals. The city attorney proposes keeping the current $100 threshold. After watching the machinations the city manager went through during the Fernandez fiasco to somehow convince everyone that the Skybox tickets were worth just under $100 and therefore did not break any rules was ludicrous, to put it mildly. The threshold should be 0. Thank you.
Thank you. Our
Next speaker, Antonio Jackson, and then Reverend R.B. Holmes.
Mr. Jackson, your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Antonio Jackson, Carrington Drive. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Come here to support Mr. Gold. I worked with Mr. Gold for many years. I worked very closely with him on several projects, including he and Mr. Swift on the smart metering project. I know Mr. Gold to be ethical, and most importantly, he's always had an open door policy and looked out for the city employees. Everything that goes on, you never read about him or see him out front. And when the hurricane comes through and the workers out there doing all the work, the workers get the credit. He doesn't take any of the credit. And I ask you to remember the lessons learned. When he was new, he first started out, he was interim city manager. We didn't do so well during the first hurricane. But the second time, the city of Tallahassee was ready and well prepared. And now it's standard that before any hurricane, every city employee is ready and ready to go well before the storm hits. And that's a direct correlation to his leadership. I stand here and support Reese Go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. As Reverend Holmes is approaching let me just ask real quick, because this isn't actually on the agenda, but how many people are here in light of the information that came out last week in support of Reese Code as the city manager? Just a show of hands. Well, appreciate everybody coming. Reverend Holmes.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and honorable commissioners, Mr. City Manager. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I do have a friend in this fight. Integrity is in this fight. Ethics and morality is in this struggle. I come to strongly, support this city. We've come a long way. We have many issues that we must resolve. I strongly believe that we have the right city manager. I found our city manager Commissioner Richardson, to be upstanding, fair, forthright, accessible, and transparent. I pray to God that we will let the evaluation of 4 of our city commissioners, they have spoke very clearly and thoroughly about the strengths and challenges of this city manager. But we stand firmly behind our city manager, and we stand firmly behind this city. This is a great city. We have a good city manager. Let's give him an opportunity to do a great job.
Thank you, Reverend. Ginny Grimsley. Ms. Grimsley?
Ginny Grimsley. And then Cassandra Carter will follow her.
Thank you for joining us. Certainly appreciate it. Your name and address for the record, please.
Ginny Grimsley, Blairstone Court. I am going to yield my time to the Ethics Board. Anyone who wants to speak on the Ethics Board.
Well, we don't yield time, so I encourage you to use your 3 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. I'm here to just support further ethics.
Excellent.
Stronger ethics ordinances. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Our next speaker.
Next, Cassandra Carter, then Lisa Ward.
Ms. Carter, good to see you. Your name and address for the record, please.
Cassandra Carter, Tewksbury Trace here in Tallahassee. So good morning to you all, as well as you all in the audience. I'm just coming here to also state that I am in support of Mr. Gold. I've been here a little over 9.5 years with the City of Tallahassee. Reese started out as the general manager in our building when we were utility business and customer service, and now we're customer operations. And he has always given us the support that we needed. He's always, if something wasn't right, he wanted us to get it right. He didn't pounce on us. He just needed it to be done. And that's what I'm here to stand in support of his leadership and to let him know that we appreciate him. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
The next speaker is Lisa Ward.
Ms. Ward.
And then Rhonda Reeves-Smith.
Ms. Ward, your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Ward, 4252 Old Plantation Loop. I'm here this morning in support of Reese Gold. I want to say thank you so much for your leadership to this community and to customer operations. Thank you so much for being tangible. I'll never forget my first day with the city. You were warm, you were welcoming, you were inviting. You have an amazing spirit, and I just want to say thank you for all that you do for the citizens of Tallahassee and for customer operations. I'm in support of your leadership. Thank you.
Our next speaker.
Next speaker is Rhonda Reeves-Smith, and then Richard Herring.
Ms. Reeves-Smith.
Rhonda Reeves-Smith, Laurel Oak Circle, City of Tallahassee employee. I've been with the city for over 17 years. And most of my tenure, all of my tenure actually, I've known Mr. Gold. And under his leadership has been definitely, he's been part of not only moving forward, he's always been positive, he's always been fair, and he's definitely been consistent. I started pretty much at what you call the front end of work. I started out as a customer account specialist, and I worked my way up to a manager of customer operations. Through my path, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of conversation talking to our city manager, and he's challenged me along the way. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be in my current position as manager of customer operations. So for that, thank you. I also am very proud to be a citizen of Tallahassee. I graduated from Florida A&M University, which I think is the best HBCU around.
It is, indeed.
And my kids, I have 2 daughters. I'm raising them here, and it's my plan to be here until I retire. And I'm hopeful that I will be able to retire with the City of Tallahassee, not only under Mr. Gold's leadership, but all of you. I am proud to be a citizen, an employee of the City of Tallahassee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Herring is next, and then Ben Wilcox will follow him.
Mr. Chairman, let me once again state how much we appreciate the hard work that you're doing as chairman and the board for the work that you put into the recommendations that you sent us. We know you spend a lot of time on that, and we are very appreciative.
Richard Herring, 1110 Ivanhoe Road. I'm here today just as a 40-year resident of Tallahassee. Montesquieu wrote that the principle that drives democracies is the love of virtue, the willingness to put interests of the community ahead of private interests. Our ethics laws provide evidence of that willingness. Any ethics proposal can be criticized as unneeded, too broad, or different from the way someone else does ethics. I believe the discussion should be whether an ethics proposal will be seen by members of the community as a guarantee that all decisions by their government are made for the good of the community and not for any other reason. Today, ethics is a part of our city charter, the most important legal document of the city. In 2014, 20,000 Tallahassee voters petitioned to add ethics to our charter. When the city went to circuit court to keep ethics off the ballot, the Coalition for Ethics Reform fought off the city's effort. At the 2014 election, the voters, by a margin of 2-1, said they wanted ethics in the charter. All of that was due in no small part to the extraordinary efforts of a number of people who are speaking today for 3 minutes. We all owe them a debt.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next speaker.
Ben Wilcox, then Peter Butzine.
Mr. Wilcox, good to see you, sir. Your name and address.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Ben Wilcox with the Coalition Citizens for Ethics Reform, and I live at 1719 Old Fort Drive. The task before you today is to craft a meaningful ethics ordinance that will raise the ethics bar for the City of Tallahassee and begin to restore our city's reputation. Right now, what we are known for in Tallahassee is corruption. Pay to play. Do you want to bring economic development to Tallahassee? New businesses, new jobs? Nobody wants to bring business to a city that is known for corruption, that tolerates corruption. Everyone that lives in this city is paying a corruption tax because of the selfish and corrupt actions of a former city commissioner, city manager, lobbyists, and developers. That tax is impossible to quantify, but it is real. You are seeing it in the high crime rate and the lack of job opportunities for the poorer members of our community. A number of you recently traveled to Greenville along with our Chamber of Commerce to see how that city has been successful in rebuilding after an economic downturn. Have you ever asked yourself why other cities don't come to Tallahassee to see all the great things that we are doing? What would they learn from Tallahassee? How to hold a ribbon cutting and pretend that everything is great? Aw shucks, y'all. Let's do this the Tallahassee way. Let's deflect the attention from the real problem and pretend that it's our ethics board that's the problem. The level of cynicism from our citizens about government in Tallahassee is off the charts. Our ethics board has proposed an ethics ordinance that would be considered the gold standard for a municipal ethics code. The board went through a deliberative process that involved consultation with Phil Claypool, former general counsel and executive director of the Florida Commission on Ethics. He is generally considered the expert on ethics law in Florida. Mayor Daley has also proposed some good ideas for this workshop you are holding today. In short, it's time to fish or cut bait. You have all talked the talk, especially during your campaigns. Now we will see if you will walk the walk. The status quo is not acceptable. Your actions today will tell us whether you are the problem or the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox.
Next speaker is Peter Butzine.
And Ben, you'll be happy to know that as of just last Friday, we hosted the mayor of Greenville here in Tallahassee to come check out what's going on and some of the wonderful things that we're doing. Peter, good to see you, sir.
I am here to support the Independent Ethics Board's recommended ethics reforms. When I was a graduate student in history, I learned the importance of reading primary sources. So what does that lesson teach us today? In all the fuss over passing a tough, fair, and enforceable ethics code, we must first look and be guided by the charter initiative that became part of the city's charter in 2014. So what does this document require? First, the City of Tallahassee has violated its own charter during the last 4.5 years. The charter is clear, quote, the City Commission shall, within 6 months of the enactment of this ethics provision, charter provision, enact an ethics code or conflict of interest code, end quote. In the aftermath of the greatest political scandal in our city's history, 4 fresh faces now serve on the commission. We are hopeful that our new leaders, you will indeed finally get the message and not blow this opportunity that is before us. Second, the charter is clear. The ethics code, this is a quote, the ethics code may, as allowed by law, supplement state ethics laws. The board has been criticized for recommending local ethics ordinances that exceed Chapter 112, which implemented the Sunshine Amendment. Well, I was part of that coalition that worked with Governor Askew to implement the Sunshine Amendment. Throughout the years, the legislature has resisted strengthening Chapter 112, just as your predecessors resisted passing an effective ethics ordinance for our city. When we drafted the charter, we purposefully expected Tallahassee to do better than the low bar established by the legislature. Third, the charter is clear regarding the ethics board's jurisdiction, which shall be, quote, over the officers and employees of the City of Tallahassee, whether elected or appointed, paid or unpaid, and over the members, officers, and employees of any boards, commissions, or committees thereof. The board's recommendation simply asks that the city implement what the charter already requires to expand your jurisdiction. Fourth, and this is most important, the charter amendment makes it very clear that the ethics board shall be truly independent from the mayor and the commission and the city's officers. So respectfully, you have no authority to meddle in the board's internal procedures. To do so clearly violates the charter and its mandate that the ethics board be fully independent. Some of you may not like the charter amendment, and you certainly have it in your power to scuttle it. But we'll be prepared for that battle because we believe that 67% of the voters knew exactly what they were doing when they voted in favor of this charter amendment back in November of 2014. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker?
Next speaker is Alethea Edwards.
Miss Edwards.
And then Dominic Labra.
Your name and address for the record, please. Is Alethea here?
Yes.
Oh, Miss Edwards. All right. It's good to see you, Miss Edwards.
Alethea Edwards, 1802 Saxon Street, Tallahassee, Florida, of course. I'm here just to stand in support of the commissioner. I was in Chicago when I saw the Tallahassee Democrat, and people in Chicago was who pointed out. I didn't realize people were watching us that closely around the United States. And so it caught me as a shock that, we were in the news for such a thing, and I thought we were moving forward. However, I stand here in support. I don't have any authority on the ethics part of this, but as a community member and as a community leader who has worked closely with all of you all and the city manager, I think that we all are doing a great job. I'm the president of the bond community. We got $6.4 million. That's never happened in all of the history of Tallahassee and investment in a community. You all have given $1.3 million to Purpose Built. You got some new energy bills. You did MetroNet 2 weeks ago. And I can imagine that with 80% new commission, that the staff takes on the burden of helping you all understand what's going on and how to move forward. And so we're doing great things. And I don't believe that changing leadership midstream does anything good for our city as we're continuing to try to move forward. So I hope that we do the right thing and keep our city manager here and keep moving forward. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Mr. Labra. The next speaker is Dominic Labra, followed by
Melissa Ingram.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and citizens. My name is Dominic Labra. My business address is 106 North Bruno Street. My personal residence is 4901 Shelbourne Drive. I've personally, professionally dedicated myself to promoting better performance, productivity, accountability, and transparency throughout Florida state and local governments. As CEO of Florida Tax Watch, a public interest nonpartisan group, these past 40 years, I've done my best to call them like we see them, let the chips fall where they may. We've always focused, though, on how things can be better. We tried never to destroy our institutions, just build them up, but be tough. I mean, we've been very tough through the years. Democrat, Republican, Independent, didn't matter. Pretty much as Reverend R.B. Holmes came here, I have no dog in this fight. and I really can't speak about the comments that were made about the manager. If the manager did these things, I strongly suggest that he be prosecuted, not just fired. But most importantly, we should take action when you see them. Let's not wait months and months on end. I know it's appropriate as part of the time, part of it just because of the evaluation, but I think it's really important to take action as soon as one sees them. And the whole efforts of the Ethics Commission, I commend the Commission and the work that they're doing, but also y'all in that regard. To do otherwise, I think, is distracting from the progress we're making, the healing we're beginning to experience here in this community. And I think it's also inadvertently, I don't think it was intended, but it tends to be disrespectful to the institution and the people served. I don't think you meant that, but that is how I saw it, and that's why I came here to speak. I urge all of us to remember the Rotarian four-way test. I've given enough speeches there.
Is it the truth?
That I have a lot of the collections. First, is it fair? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Is it the truth? Will it build goodwill and better relationships? And lastly, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Melissa Ingram, followed by
Althea Barnes.
Ms. Ingram. Good to see you. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, Melissa Ingram, 2162 Hickory Lane, Tallahassee, Florida. I am up here today to support Reese. I have worked with Mr. Goad for almost 20 years in a variety of positions. He started in lower management and has managed to work his way up. At all points during that time, he has been nothing but above board and above ethical. He is a man that really is concerned about his employees. He works very hard to keep his people on top of the game and doing exceptionally well. If he has an employee that's not doing well, he will work to make sure that employee can be successful either in that position or in another position. And he has always been an excellent city manager. It seems that some of you are trying to punish the city manager, Mr. Goad, for things that were done by past city managers or past commissions. This is wrong. Mr. Goad, for the last 2 years, has worked exceptionally hard to improve the morale of the city employees. The city employees' morale took a dive before he took the position. It was very, very low. And in that 2 years, morale has increased dramatically. Unfortunately, with the recent events and threats against Mr. Goad, this has set the city morale, the city staff, city employees, back into a state of uncertainty and fear. We can't do our best work in that kind of environment. We need the security and the understanding that we are all safe and will be treated fairly. And we absolutely get that from Mr. Goad. As you can see, the chambers are packed out.
Yeah.
If everyone that is supporting Mr. Goad would please stand up. And Mr. Goad, maybe you could close your eyes so they're not concerned that they will be reprimanded, because I'm certain they wouldn't. No? That's a pretty loud statement. Over a dozen or so employees over the last 20 years who are very unhappy. I think that says a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Althea Barnes, followed by Stanley Simms.
Good
Ms.
morning.
Barnes? Good morning.
Hi. Althea Barnes, 2619 Summerwood Avenue. Usually I watch all of the meetings from other places as I'm doing things from the computer, but I was led here this morning because earlier, as someone else said, I was away when the news came in the newspaper. And I had some colleagues call me talking about a situation in Tallahassee of corruption and unethical behavior with the city manager. And, of course, right away I said, well, no, that's old news. I think you may be talking about an earlier situation. But lo and behold, when I pulled up my information, I did see what they were referencing. My reaction was disappointing and concerning because some of us who have been working with the commissioners short term, though it be for some, the administrators, the city manager, assistant city managers, we thought everything was going just fine. And for the first time, we were feeling that we had an open, transparent, participating government that was inclusive across the community. So, that said, I think what we need to do, as some others have indicated, is to take a look at where we are as an organization and as processes unfold. Having had 28 years in personnel management, there are key things that make for a success. And I'm not trying to be an academic, whatever, but first of all, internal communication is very important before taking things externally. Another is to try and de-escalate conflict as much as possible. And then in whatever we do, we should think of the impact on the organization that we are committed to serve and work for. And every position that I've called, work for the citizens of Tallahassee, whether elected, appointed, hired, whatever. So my hope is that moving forward, we will be able to come through this with a spirit of cooperation.
You have about 15 seconds.
Thank you. Redirect the approach that we've used and hopefully get on track in a positive spirit to do the business of the city. Engage the community as you have been doing. Communicate transparently with sensitivity and uphold the basic principles of good governance and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Stanley Simms.
Mr. Simms, followed by
Barney Bishop.
Followed by Barney Bishop. Mr. Simms, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And since we're doing polls, all here who is a city employee ever received any funding, if you're a nonprofit, please raise your hand high just like you did in support of Risco. Raise those hands high, or we can't raise them now. I did a second poll, Mayor. I did a second poll. I walked around all of these here people who are so praising this guy that got a 5. And guess what? Out of 20 people, I only found 2 that was proud to tell me that they got a 5. So now, they ain't getting no 5s, but y'all putting the 5 on him. My name is Stanley Simms. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. I'm going to say this as politely, because I had wrote a good little speech till I saw all of this staging. I feel like a curve this morning. I have fought against you, with you, and when I need you most, you abandon me. And it ain't about the land of the people, because the land of the people heart are good. I watch cars. Don't look at all of this here, but some people here, I detail cars for a living. And sometimes, Mayor, I don't even have the supplies or the way. But last week, one of my clients, I'm Tallahassee proud today, and don't you get it twisted. One of my clients bought my supplies. I didn't have a way home, Wanda, and guess what? Sent for me a Uber. And in that Uber trip, Mr. Mayor, we took down Live Plantation Road. Woo! Miss Bloom, you want to see some beautiful trees, go down Live Plantation Road. And you got to be careful on that road, because all them big old trees that's no value on the south side are valuable over there. And they got this sign. One of those people got a sign out there that said, drive like your children live here. And so I called my spiritual advisor and I said, Reverend, they got this sign over here on Live Plantation Road. Said, drive like your children live here. I want to go back, Vince, and put one say, pay us like the parents pay that live here. Because we don't get that kind of pay. We've got city employees that are making less than $10 an hour. And when you need them most, y'all promised fair wages. You put me down, Mr. Mayor, and said that our employees didn't.
You're at 2.5 minutes.
Let me spend these last. Let me talk about Mr. Reese Gold. I remember Mr. Reese Gold when he refused to shake my hand down there when I was fighting for access into this building. Things that he adopted. That's my experience with Reese Gold. My experience with Reese Gold, when I was about to have a stroke down there, the security guards were told to stand back. That's my experience. My experience with Reese Gold, when he introduced himself to my son at the golf course, who he is, a city temporary employee, he was so petrified he called his mama. My experience with Reese Gold, he moved my wife a 5. Yes, she is a 5. And you told me on September 16th that I need to watch what I say. My wife is a 5, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Simms.
And I'm no longer intimidated.
Thank you, Mr. Simms. For the record, it's Live Oak Plantation Road, not Live Plantation Road. Our next speaker is Mr. Barney Bishop.
Mr. Barney Bishop, followed by John Reed.
Tell me a road on the south side.
Tuskegee Street.
Mr. Bishop, your name and address for the record, please.
Jeez.
Yes, good morning. First, would you let me know when I have a minute left?
Yes, I will.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Barney Bishop. I live at 2215 Thomasville Road, Tallahassee. I've been a resident here for 36 years. I want to share with you this morning that I know that every one of you supports strong ethics, and I appreciate that. And our community appreciates that because we need to turn the page. But I'm here as chairman of the Citizens for Responsible Spending, and I want to share with you 6 items that we believe are important, and I'll make them quick. Number 1, 0 gift bans for everybody. It's the same thing we have to do at the state legislature. We can't give them a glass of water. They have to pay for it. No ban means that everybody knows what the rules are. There's no gray line. Number 2, creation of an inspector general. It's what state agencies have, it's what the federal government has, and it's what the city of Tallahassee absolutely needs. Number 3, ethics board members need to file the same financial disclosure form that you as elected officials have to file. We need to make sure that none of them are getting anything on the side. Number 4, please ensure that the system that you're going to implement is going to be fair and balanced for everybody. Okay? That's really important. Number 5, as a lobbyist, and I've been lobbying for 41 years, I want you to make the requirements for lobbying the city of Tallahassee the strongest that you possibly can. Don't lower the fines. Keep them where they are. You don't want any lobbyists violating the rule. Number 6, with regard to ethical conduct, do the same thing as the state provides. That is a standard that's been tested in court. It'll be fair to you because you'll have the same standards that state officials right across the road have. The last item that I want to talk about for a moment, though, is the city ethics officer.
That's 2 minutes. You have 1 remaining.
Good. That's perfect. I know that you have no power over the city ethics officer, but some of the independent board members of the ethics board are here today, and this is a message for them. I read about the demand from the city ethics officer's lawyer that the city ethics officer wants an apology, wants her $1,200 back that she paid to Tiger Bay, which is absolutely ludicrous, and that she wants $450,000. Wow. I got to tell you, she's taking better drugs than I am. And that's a lot, because I take a lot of pills every day. This is utterly laughable. She should not be allowed to stay. She has, in my opinion, committed unethical behavior, and in addition, she's exhibited poor judgment. If you have to go to Tiger Bay to see an ethics meeting, then you're not really an ethics officer, okay? Number 2, you can go as a guest. You don't have to pay $1,200. That's poor judgment.
You're at 3 minutes.
In the end, she needs to go. She needs to go now.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Ethics members, please listen up. We're watching.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Next speaker is Mr. John Reed.
Correct. John Reed.
Followed by
Irwin Jackson. And at this time, Dr. Jackson is the last speaker form I have.
Excellent. Mr. Reed, I know you were general counsel for the Ethics Board. You have also done a great job preparing your board and putting together recommendations. We certainly appreciate your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members. Just primarily wanted to make myself available for any questions that you may have as we proceed through the workshop. I did also want to commend this commission and staff for its commitment to ethics reform. Particularly, Mayor, you've outlined some very good ideas that we also share with you as well. I also want to commend Ms. Jackson and her staff, who I think have done an exceptional analysis of our proposals. I'm indifferent to her recommendations, but as far as the analysis, I think that it is right on. The proposal that's before you would place Tallahassee among the most robust ethics codes within the state of Florida. We think it moves us in the right direction. There are a couple of issues I wanted to proactively address because I think there are issues that we share as city leaders, and we want to pledge to you that we're working with you. One is this issue of the ethics and fraud hotline and how complaints that go through those hotlines are treated. I know that Ms. Jackson has provided an analysis, which I agree with, which is under Section 112.324 Florida statute. We have the ability to treat those through a preliminary investigation, take those out of the sunshine to determine whether probable cause exists before we proceed with an evidentiary hearing if it becomes necessary. And that is an issue that we as a board are currently engaged in and are working with, and hopefully we'll have a change that you'll find suitable prior to you take your action. There was a recommendation regarding conflicting employment and contractual relationship being removed because it duplicates language in state statute. Just to provide some background on why that was provided there, if a complainant were to bring a multi-count complaint and one included misuse and one included conflicting employment, we would now require them to go down the street to the state commission to deal with one issue and stay here in Tallahassee with others. We simply felt that in the case there were a multi-count complaint, we could handle them in-house as one. I agree with the issue dealing with appellate review that was put forward by the city attorney. We have established that in our procedures. Rule 1.05 provides appellate procedures dictated by state law, which provides for a writ of certiorari to the circuit court. We feel that it would be appropriate for it to be placed in the ordinance as well. We have followed, I think, as Mr. Bishop has stated, we have modeled ourselves after what is done at the state level. We have adopted a lot of the policies, mirrored a lot of procedures that you see within Chapter 110 proceedings. When I'm not here, is that's my other practice. I'm an administrative law attorney that does Chapter 120 proceedings. And when you have a disputed material fact, we become no longer the quasi-judicial body, but in fact become an adversarial party, prosecutorial party, and the issue goes to DOA, who we will contract with to serve as the independent fact finder. The issue comes back to the board, and then that's subject to judicial review. So those are some of the big picture issues that I wanted to make aware. And like I said, I'll be standing in the back and make myself available for any questions you might have.
Thank you. I know that you and the city attorney have been working hand in hand in all this. Thank you very much.
She's excellent. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Irwin Jackson, followed by
Sue Dick.
Dr. Jackson, name and address for the record, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
You stayed in town just for us, didn't you?
I certainly did. This is important to me. It's been important to me for 10 years. Reese Goad, you need to apologize to the citizens of Tallahassee. And I'll tell you why. Several months ago, I learned that Rick Fernandez was taking bribes and gifts, and football tickets and cash payments. I filed an ethics complaint. The question was, how much were these tickets worth? You did an investigation, your staff, you signed off on it, that as long as the value was less than $100, the ticket, there'd be no problem with Rick Fernandez. You could protect him. Well, unfortunately, you did this study, and it came back, and guess what? The value of these football tickets were $99. Wonderful work. Unfortunately, I buy 8 of them every year. They cost me almost $400. In addition, when the ethics commission at the state level made a determination that your decision of $99 was not correct, that it was in excess of $100, and they ruled that he did act in violation of the ethics laws. So to get things off on the right foot, it would be very helpful if you would apologize for that, because that hurt me, because in many ways I think you're doing a fine job. But we can't tolerate people protecting the corruption in Tallahassee. We have an ethics ordinance here. Everything I've read that the city attorney has suggested weakens that. What we have to do is we have to broaden the jurisdiction to all city employees. We have to have the misuse of office as known or should have known. Scott Maddox is the only one that wants the corruption clause in there because it makes it almost impossible. We have to have everyone sign the Form 6. We have to have stronger penalties. Don't talk to me about $1,000 or $2,000. Say whatever the value is that you've taken. If it's $5,000 and Rick Fernandez's position where he took $10,000 or $15,000 for a financial benefit, then make it 3 times what he took. The penalty would be $45,000. Anyone's going to pay $1,000 if I get caught. 3 times. The zero gift ban. People understand zero, nepotism, I almost finished. The nepotism, we have too many city officials, city managers, commissioners, senior staff that have their family members get jobs in the city. We need to have a zero ban on employees who are hired by senior staff
you have 15
and city
seconds.
commissioners. They should be not allowed to hire their relatives. The nepotism. And one other thing, we need no more politicians appointed to the ethics board. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Dr. Jackson, you brought up a point that was also mentioned earlier, and let me make it clear for the record that the Inspector General item will come up under separate cover at a separate meeting. The auditor is bringing that issue back. It will be addressed. It just won't be addressed today under the ethics package. So.
Right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Next speaker is Sue Dick.
1341 Jackson Bluff, if you want my address.
Thank you.
And then Christy Henry.
Ms. Dick, good to see you. Your name and address, please.
Thank you, Sue Dick, 412 Plantation Road. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I wasn't planning on speaking. I actually was here because we've been receiving a lot of feedback over the last week or so from our business community. And I think in my role, I have the pleasure and the honor to serve as the staff person for the Chamber of Commerce. Next year will be my 20 years in that position. Never thought I would be doing this for 20 years, but that means I've been in these chambers for 20 years and in this great community. I will tell you, and referencing back to something Alethea said and Altamise with regards to the public perception, I remember being out of the country several years ago when we were on the front page of USA Today, and that was not a good day. I would also like to say, though, that as we've worked through all of that, this community, as we sit here today, needs to continue to work together and be a unified voice. This is a new commission. We have new staff in place. We have much to be proud of, much hard work to be done. Last week alone, Thursday, I had the opportunity to participate in the Office of Economic Vitality's MedWeek celebration. 2 local businesses were recognized. Many elected officials, many of you around this table were at that forum, working very hard, but to support our local businesses and to say how important those local businesses are. On Friday, Mayor, you referenced, yes, the mayor of Greenville was here because he was participating and attending a real estate trends conference convention that was held in this community. Granted, standing room only because we had a lot of visitors here, but they were here to see this community. This is a lot of hard work. I commend anyone who's willing to run for public office. It is a tough venture. But I would say there's a lot of good that's being done. And as mentioned in the editorial today by our city manager, there's been a lot of success to date. The journey is not over, but we must come together as a community and really say that we are here, we love this community, and we're going to continue to work together because it's a lot of hard work. To the city employees that are here, thank you for your service. You have been there on many, many occasions when I know I have reached out and asked for assistance for our businesses. To the city manager, I have asked you to assist with everything from a business that has had crime issues to a homeless incident in our downtown.
You're at 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. To just trying to be supportive, and I've watched the team and the staff work as very, very hard as they can. I'd also like to comment, because I see county employees here as well. From the business community, we need to be able to reach out and have the support of our local government. We cannot do what we want to do in this community without a partnership. So I want to say thank you. Let's move forward if we can. We are here to support you, our 1,400 members and our over 10,000 business licenses in our community. We are all here because we love this community, and everyone needs to benefit and be a part of this community and be able to take care of what they need to take care of. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Christy Henry.
And then Judy Mandrell. And for the second time, that's the last speaker card I have.
Okay. Ms. Henry, thank you for sticking around and being with us. Certainly do appreciate it. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hey, y'all. Christy Henry, 3121 Pontiac Drive. Good morning, City Manager.
Good morning.
Commission. I'm here this morning because I got about 15 calls about this ethics hearing this weekend, from neighborhood leaders who were concerned about what was going on. It's hard to stand here in a city where ethics seems to be a subjective term. Mm-hmm. Your ethics are different from my ethics based upon what I believe, what I understand to be true, what I understand to be important. But I think what we all agree is that we don't want a city of 4 years ago. I think we all agree on that. I think we agree that the people in this room have a bit more information, a bit more involvement, where they have the courage to be here this morning. But there are 90,000 plus residents out there that don't. And those are the folks that call people like me, who depend on us to come and to stand for them in front of you. So I'm going to do the best I can. I stand in support of Reese Gold this morning because I think our city deserves to have stability at our staff level. I don't want to see a city that's wondering who their leadership is, who the transitions are. They don't want that instability. A city manager in place in improving where it needs to be improved offers a continuity of government for a new representative body. We have a brand new commission. The staff is the continuity for this commission. They also mediate between diverse perspectives and diverse ethics base of this city, and factions in this community, which we can clearly see. Not only are we divided here, but we're divided out here too. So we got a lot to do outside as well as internally. I think that moving forward, and please let me know when I have a minute left, that we have to make sure that ethics are understood as they pertain to the ordinance requirements for our city by lay residents. Because if that doesn't happen, then I'm going to bring my ethical understanding to the city commission. And it's not going to be the same as others. It's not going to be an equality there in terms of what I believe, because we have conflicting understandings. So we have to do a better job with helping our community understand what is the ethical mandate for our ordinance of governance here in our community.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you. On the lay member level, as well as on the staff and on the leadership level. We elect folks to represent our voice on the commission. We trust those voices. I trust those voices. I'm not going to make this about me. Yes, I came to this community. I've worked in these streets. I've cleaned them up. I've worked with lay people for 20 years, and I love them. I love this city. Have I been disappointed in some things? Yes, but I'm not going to stop working to bring about equality and ethics and understanding. So I encourage you today, as you work together, please do so. Do so in a way where the example can be set for the rest of us so that we're not fearful of instability. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Judy Mandrell. Pastor Mandrell, thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Judy Mandrell, 1911 Chalkeban Court, Tallahassee, Florida. I'll make this real short. I looked at all of you up here. I think that I'm pretty good friends with all of you. I had the opportunity to speak with all of you. I got my sister girl Honorary Sister Girl Curtis Richardson up there. I have my radio.
I wear it proudly.
You wear it proudly. I have my own radio show, the Real Talk with Judy show. Also co-pastor with my husband at Life Changers. Yesterday was phenomenal. At the longest table. If you all read my posts on Facebook, I write a lot. I talk a lot. And one of the things I talk about is, and one thing I like about this city is the peace and harmony that we're working so hard for. I was disappointed when so many people sent me Jerry Matlow's evaluation of Reese because I don't like outside fighting. We have enough fighting. But Jerry Matlow taught me something very important. And he said when you want something to happen, you got to be intentional about it. And so I work hard with a whole lot of people to fight racism, to fight bigotry, to fight hatred. I hate it with a passion. I joined Leadership Tallahassee, and I'm a proud graduate of Leadership Tallahassee Class 36. A lot of them came to my church last Sunday, and we had a great time. Peace and harmony. Different religion, different races, different background, different economical status. One of them told me they never heard somebody ask for offering. I said, well, the Bible says you don't ask, you don't get it. So you got to ask for it. They said they never spent so much time jumping and shouting and clapping their hands. But you know what? They wasn't afraid to come. I came because I support Reese. And I love Jerry. I love this commission. I do. I think that we're making strive, y'all. I think that we got problems. I think we got issues. I think we got to work on some things, but not fighting on Facebook. Not doing that on Facebook. My husband and I have been married 38 years, and no one has ever heard me talk bad about my husband. No one has ever heard him talk bad about me. Has everything been 100? Yes, because we watching on TV. Everything has been 100. Mr. Irwin Jackson, I see him and some more men in Village Inn. I love how they sit down. I don't know what they're talking about. I just love the fact that they're talking.
I got about 20 seconds left.
I see some other men out there talking. I love it. That's how we're going to get this peace, y'all. We don't have to have a city full of hate coming at each other. Do I think we're doing everything right? No. But do I think it's possible that we can? Yes. I think that we can do this thing. I don't like everything about y'all. Y'all don't like everything about me. And it's okay. Let's live together, y'all. Tallahassee really is a great city. I'm from Fort Lauderdale. Don't send me back.
Okay, that concludes the public hearing. It is 10 minutes after 10 o'clock. We're scheduled to go to 11, and I still feel very confident that we'll be able to do so and move forward with the business at hand. However, I do want to address the elephant in the room and the fact that we had so many people come out in regards to the communication that took place by Commissioner Matlow in regards to the city manager and the employee evaluation. And I believe Ms. Ingram summed it up as well. We are very concerned about, the state of the body when it comes to our employees that need security and need to believe in their leadership as well. And I strongly support that. Look, folks, this is a great city, and we do amazing things together. And as I have said previously, and I'll say it again, I have full confidence in our city manager, Reese Goad. I think he's done a tremendous job. And it was brought up by one of the public speakers about the fact that we have so many city employees here. And one thing I do agree with Commissioner Matlow, we will not silence city employee voices. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has an opportunity to speak. And these are the chambers of the people. And if people come and want to speak, they're going to be given the opportunity to address this body. That is for sure. But just to make sure that everybody is comfortable and confident that this commission is moving forward, even though it's not on the agenda, I do think that it is appropriate to take a ceremonial vote of strong support based on the evaluations that took place in support of our city manager. His contract's not up for negotiation, but there needs to be a strong message sent to the employees and the citizens of Tallahassee. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, not to catch you off guard, but I'm looking at you as the next in line of leadership to make a motion in support of Reese Goad. in a strong voice of confidence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do not hesitate to offer that motion. I have had the opportunity to work with Mr. Gold now for the 6 years that I've been on the commission in the various capacities that he's served in, and I have found him to be a very honorable man, very ethical, with integrity. He has been responsive to this commission and to the citizens of this community. He cares about this city. He's a family man. He's raising his family here. He's made a commitment to make Tallahassee be the best city that she can be, working with all of us. He has worked with us as a commission. He's done a tremendous job of onboarding an 80% new commission. Now, the one thing I would have to say, I think my face is pretty fresh, too. But in all seriousness, I have full faith and confidence in our city manager, as was reflected in my evaluation of him, not only this year, but in the previous year that I had an opportunity to evaluate him. And I think that it is necessary that we make a strong statement to this community that there will be stability in the leadership here at the City of Tallahassee, to our employees who give so much every day to making this city be what she can be and representing us well wherever they go throughout the country and making us look good. I still remember how our electrical workers and volunteers in neighborhood affairs have gone out when we've faced natural disasters and been there for the citizens of this community, and not necessarily being compensated for it, but they did it because they care about their neighbors, not just in the neighborhood where they live, but across this city. And Reese, our city manager, has been a leader in that, in encouraging that and fostering that. He has led by example in that regard. So I am more than happy to offer a motion in strong support of our city manager and continuing his leadership here at City Hall in the city of Tallahassee, Mr. Mayor.
I second that motion. Commissioner Bryant for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start by saying that the support that is in this room today for our city manager by employees is not only applaudable, but it's very reflective of the support that he has for the job that he's doing. Now, I'm the newest person on the commission. I don't have the history that maybe others have. So as a 30-plus year HR professional, there are certain standards that we look for when we do evaluations. So my evaluation reflects what I have seen in the time that I've been here with our city manager. He has provided exemplary leadership. I also teach leadership, so I know many of the principles that we look for in a leader. So I just want to say in very simple terms that I support Mr. Gold. I'm looking forward to another year or years ahead to support him. I do expect that we will have standards. I do expect that we will have goals. And I do expect that the city manager will, in fact, lead the people of the city of Tallahassee to accomplish those goals. So I am in 100% support of Mr. Gold as our city manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Williams-Cox for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, stand by the evaluation that I did. I took great time to put together what I believe to be a fair evaluation of my experience in working with Mr. Gold this past time. I have no control over what happened prior to my working with Mr. Gold because I am a trained manager and I have supervised many. I can only evaluate what I have experience with. And my evaluation of 4.3, which is an exceeds expectation of Mr. Gold, I stand by that. I provided areas that he and I have been working on,
and areas that I look forward to continue to work on. And there was nothing there that surprised him because we've had these conversations. And I've actually given Mr. Gold a list of things that I'd like to see. And he has done a tremendous job in working on those. Are we finished? No, our work is not done. We have more work to do. And I look forward to doing that work moving into fiscal year 2020. And that includes making sure that diversity and inclusion is a key part of what we do. And last week, you heard the announcement of a diversity and inclusion division being created. Also, moving the needle on poverty. We've done some things this year that were unprecedented. We have organizations who traditionally have been funding these events and these things out of their pockets. We were able to work together with Mr. Gold and his staff to provide support for these organizations so that people don't have to come out of their pockets. We can all take credit for the work that is being done. And we're also preparing for the future by helping these organizations become part of the CHSP process to be able to at least apply for those fundings. We've also taking monies from places that were not necessarily always given to where it was needed to make sure, as our previous commissioner said, everybody's getting their fair share. Well, that was not true. That was not, in my opinion, correct. And when I was on the other side of the dais, I made sure that the commission at that time understood that. So now that I'm on this side of the dais, I am doing everything that I can to work with my colleagues to move the needle on poverty, to get people out of poverty. People are concerned about their next meal. They're concerned about their shelter. They're concerned about health care. They're concerned about their children's education. Those are the issues that are important to me. That is why they sent me here. They did not send me here to fight. They sent me here to help find solutions to their problems. And I am doing my level best, and I ask you to join me in doing that. And changing city management at this point in time is premature, and I do not support it. You cannot change horses in the middle of the stream, in the middle of the game, and expect to be successful. Y'all have heard me say this before, and I don't mean it in any slight. We're going to take our horse to the Old Town Road. And we're going to ride it till we can't no more. Because we are making progress. We are making tremendous progress. And if it hasn't come down your street yet, listen for the bell like we do when the ice cream truck comes. It's coming to your street soon. So stick with us. We're going to make this happen. But we've got to do it together. Tallahassee proud and Tallahassee strong. That's how we're going to do it. You cannot do it. A house divided cannot stand. Thank you.
Commissioner Matlow for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hold on, Stanley. I'm trying to speak over here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and my colleagues. I just want to begin by saying I'm glad that this day has finally come to where we can adopt a strong ethics ordinance. And, as we know, 4 years ago, our community demanded this, and I think we're finally taking the necessary step to move our community in the right direction. It wasn't my intention to address this before the ethics package. I think it should have waited till after, as it is an unagended item. But considering we're in the moment we are now, I'm going to take the liberty and go ahead and address it. The city is well served when it creates accountability at all levels, from the commission to every frontline employee, to every elected, to every appointed official. Ultimately, history is going to judge us by our ability to restore the public trust, to hold accountable the people who are responsible for wrongdoing, and to reset the city's moral compass. While I believe some of the proposals that we made could go even further, I think what we're going to adopt today is going to be strong, and it's going to set the direction for an ethical city government, one that our citizens can believe in, and one that we can trust. So again, to my colleagues, let me thank you for your leadership in this regard. As we move forward, I think it's important that as part of this work, we are honest with the employees in this government and our city, that we are serious about ethics. And what we will adopt today will show that the culture in our city government is changing. particularly at the commission and the senior management level, and we must begin that change without delay. I believe this culture will only change when we implement actual change. For me, that change starts at the top. So it should come as no surprise that on last week, through my annual review of the city manager, I announced that I had lost all confidence in the city manager, Reese Goode. I came to City Hall, like each and every one of you, with a mandate from our citizens of this community to clean up these halls of power. After 11 months in office, I am convinced that can only be accomplished by exercising one of our chief responsibilities, the hiring, firing, and retention of the chief administrator of our city. As I wrote in my review of the city manager, his actions on a range of issues, defense of a nepotism policy, a rigged investigation into the football ticket scandal, audit findings of careless record keeping, inconsistent hiring and firing practices, and not to mention litigation against him that accuses him personally of withholding public records. These are not the qualities of leadership. These are not the qualities I would pick when selecting a leader, and they are not the qualities that we should accept from the chief employee of the city of Tallahassee. I'm not going to mince my words. I think the city manager should resign, and if he refuses to do so, I think this commission should relieve him of his duty. The fact is, he's part of an old guard. It's time for us to move in a new direction. It's time for us to clean house, wash our hands, and finally rid ourselves of the corrupt past of this city and put our city on course for where we need to go. And we can do that together, but we can't do that by hiding and covering up what's happened here in the past. Now, I read the Tallahassee Democrat and saw the reporting, so I realize, and based on the comments today, I'm not naive. I know that this is my opinion and mine alone, and I will stand on that. I respect that. We all have to vote our conscience. We all have to make decisions based on what we believe is in the city's best interest, and that is what I intend to do. Just the same, I must also do what I believe is in the public's best interest. To that end, Mr. Mayor, I have a few offerings before we take a vote. First, is Ms. Blair, our Human Resources Director, available? I would like to see if all of the reviews have been submitted for all of our appointed officials.
Do not see Ms. Blair here.
She's in that top corner.
Ms. Blair. Yes, it looks like all of the appointed official reviews have been placed. Correct? Okay. Met deadline?
Not correct.
No?
Because I have not had the opportunity to meet with our city treasurer clerk because he was out of town. I don't submit reviews on individuals without meeting with them to discuss them. I have not
Fair
done
enough.
so. We're scheduled to meet after this meeting.
Okay,
thank you.
Commissioner Matlow, you have the floor.
So pending the final review, based on the evaluations that we have of the city manager and appointed officials, knowing that these evaluations will lead to pay increases for our appointed officials, I believe this is an official act of this governing body, and we need to bring that forward for ratification. So I'll ask that the city manager schedule an agenda item after all of the official reviews have been submitted so we can publicly ratify those combined scores before the public. Mr. City Manager, could we schedule that for November 13th?
There's no motion on the table that's been approved. Just keep moving forward and get it all out, and then we'll put it together in a motion.
With all due respect, I'm just requesting if the city manager could schedule that for November 13th.
I believe he'll be bringing all the reviews forward, won't you?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'll follow the direction of the board.
Oh, okay.
With the will of the body, I will take your direction.
Sounds good. Okay. Mr. Matlow, you have the floor.
Yeah, just continuing. And, I don't think we can move forward with increases without officially ratifying that decision by this board. As we know previously, in this year, we've been accused of violating sunshine for just that matter of compiling scores and making an official act upon them. So I hope that final decision does come before this board for ratification.
We were accused but proved in a court of law to be following our policy to the T.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not an open debate. Please just let me continue.
I am answering the question on the table, Mr. Matlow. Go ahead. You have the floor, sir.
Second, thank you, sir. As in accordance with our city charter, I'd like to formally request an audit of the office of the city manager to run concurrently or immediately after the Scott Maddox audit on public corruption. I will follow up my request in writing immediately, which will contain what I believe should be the scope of the audit. I can tell you now, I will be asking for a sweeping audit that investigates fear and intimidation, temporary hires, nepotism, and an internal investigation on unethical actions. Lastly, colleagues, I have one more final point that I need to make. We have heard from a lot of dynamic speakers today. Many of them I know, many of them I respect. Citizens can and must know that they can stand before this commission free of reproach, state their opinions, and petition this government for redress of their grievances. They should be able to do that on their own volition. That said, recently I was informed that there was an effort by city employees at the direction of Mr. Go to organize speakers at today's meeting to show public support for the city manager as a way to push back on my evaluation of him. I contacted the city manager on Friday to express my concern, and he stated he didn't think anyone would say anything they didn't feel to be true. So I'd just like to ask Mr. Goad, is that still the position of the people that city staff asked to come out by your direction, that none of them, they were all free to speak on their own volition and in no way coerced into doing so? Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, this is not a public debate.
No, it's not a public debate.
Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
He did not ask anybody, to my knowledge, to come out and speak on behalf. And I'm looking at all the good men and women that work for the city of Tallahassee that hopefully are not offended by this line of questioning on whether you were coerced to come out to speak or not. We're not going to take the public comment, though, right now, Ms. Ingram, okay? I appreciate where you are. Thank you, Mr. Goad.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'll certainly address that question. And I'll say this, that the voices of the city employees are not subordinate or secondary to any voices in our community. And I would have no doubt that the words stated were their own words. We all heard them for ourselves, and I think they speak for themselves.
Well, thank you, Mr. Goad. Mr. Mayor and colleagues, I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to bring these matters of consideration and action. I know this is hard. It's been a rough week. It's been a rough week on all of us. It's been a rough week on the commission and our employees. But at the end of the day, this is why I ran for office. For the last 5 years, our city has grappled with public corruption and accusations, and they're all coming to a head right now. I believe public office is a public trust. Public servants should treat their office as a public trust, only using the powers and resources of public office to advance the public's interest, not to attain personal benefit or pursue any other private interest incompatible with the public good. I know each of you feel the same way. I also know that power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and therefore it always must be checked. Tallahassee is still feeling the effects of what's happened over the past several years, but I believe we have a real opportunity to heal our city. We have an ethical city commission. We all want to do the right thing for our city. Let there be no doubt, in the coming weeks and months, I will continue to pursue the necessary change I believe we need in order to be an all-American city and move forward. I understand that it's uncomfortable at times, and I understand that I will likely stand alone in these calls for changes in our leadership. I do not now, nor have I in the past, ever questioned any motives of the commission. I will not be deterred, though, because I am guided by my conscience. I will not let up. I will not let up until every bit of wrongdoing that has happened here is exposed and is made right. I will not let up until every city employee can say that they are Tallahassee proud. Despite our differences of opinion in this matter, you have my respect, and I trust that I have yours. There are a host of issues where we all agree and where I can and will work with you to advance the city that we all love. Thank you again, and I look forward to our continued partnership, commissioners, and look forward to adopting a strong ethics package today.
Call the question.
Question's been called. We're going to take a vote for strong support of the city manager Reese Code. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Matlow dissenting. I'm going to turn the podium over real quick to the city manager for a couple comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do realize that there is other business in front of you, but I do appreciate the opportunity to address you. And first, thank you for your support and confidence. I sit here today to serve you. I sit here today to serve the community. I sit here to be criticized for the things that I failed to do. I move the city forward with all of the assistance of all of my colleagues every single day. It's not easy. It never will be easy. but I certainly appreciate what they do. We all must realize that's how our city moves forward. Every day, thousands of city employees are out moving our city forward, and I know that we must be focused, that you know me already. I stay very, very focused in what we must do, and it's the job of the city manager to build consensus. Certainly, not everyone will be my friend, but I would hope that we can build consensus across whether it's the employees and that they have the support that they need, or whether it's community members. And I think that I will work tirelessly to ensure that. This discussion certainly has made me reflect upon some of the things we've been able to achieve over the last year, because I think it is important to celebrate that success. I'll be honest with you, every time I try to write the list down of the things that we've done in just a short year, I can't get to the end of the list. And so in which things rise to the top of the list? I know Commissioner Williams-Cox indicated earlier in her comments about poverty. And I will tell you, I've worked for the city for many, many years, and that has not been a priority of the city because it's not inherently necessarily what we do. We're a service-based organization, but we recognize to meet the priorities of the city commission, whether it's public safety, quality of life, economic development, that poverty is a part of that. And at your January retreat, you said we must find ways to move the needle on poverty more than we've moved them, and we're making progress on that. I think probably the program that I'm most proud of is our Tempo program. I know y'all probably get tired of hearing about it when I keep talking about the Tempo program, but it's something that is unique. It's a model, and it intends to engage our disconnected youth. So we constantly fight the battle of public safety in our community. We're a growing city, and that will be a battle we always face because we're a real city with real city problems. And how do we make a difference in that? Is that only TPD being law enforcement? I don't think so. And so we found ways to implement the Tempo program. And this year we engaged 650 disconnected youth, engaging them with education and training and things of this nature. And it's something I'm very proud of that we worked as a team. I'm looking at my team, Deputy City Manager Cynthia Barber and Wayne Tedder and Raul Lavin, and the big team to move that. And so, I think about those things. I want to remain focused on doing that. We're investing money in our infrastructure with no tax rate increase. That's not the easiest thing to do. The budget process went very smooth, but with lots of discussion. And I wrote a list of all of the things that I could think of. I don't want to go down that list in the interest of time, but I want to point to a couple things. Our gas utility was recognized as the best in the nation. That's not done by accident. We expanded our ALS coverage. I see my fire command in the audience today. This is something they brought to me. They said, Reese, we need to expand the level of service that we provide our community. And we said, let's do it. And with your support, we did it rapidly. And then, of course, probably one of the major things that we did this year almost got lost in the shuffle because you did it so quickly and swiftly as a new body, was implementing a renewable energy plan that put us on the map nationally. And that, in fact, as you made the motion and approved it, was celebrated in Tampa as a national accomplishment. In the moment it was celebrated, it put us on the map. These things don't get done without the good support of the city employees and your leadership and moving forward with focus. Just a couple weeks ago, obviously, we landed one of our bigger economic development lands in many years where MetroNet, a broadband provider, indicated they were coming to town to invest $75 million, hundreds of construction jobs and dozens of permanent jobs. We've got to be focused to do that. So we must push forward with focus and clarity of mission. We are grounded in our organizational values, and if you don't mind, bear with me. I would like to read them because this is what I recite when I meet with our city employees. We must have clarity and focus. It's honoring public trust through ethical behavior. That's the top. That's brand new. We added that this year because we understood that we must underscore ethical behavior. It's providing exceptional citizen service. It's leading with integrity at every level. It's to collaborate to reach common goals, invest in employee excellence, and promote equity and celebrate diversity. These are brand new organizational values that are based on the priorities and the culture of this commission. And as Commissioner Williams-Cox indicated, just last week we added 2 new departments. One of them was the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I couldn't be more proud of it because we are going to move the needle forward. We're going to set the example. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we've got a lot of work to do. With your vision, we're moving forward, and we're eager to implement it. Thank you for your confidence.
Thank you. I am glad that we're able to put this issue to rest. Yes, Commissioner Matlow, we all share a mutual respect for the voices and the opinions of all of us on this elected body. I am disappointed we don't share the same vision of the accomplishments we've been able to handle in the past 10 months. But nonetheless, let me state for the record as mayor of Tallahassee, Commissioner Matlow, in your evaluation, you did accuse the city manager of a felony. And I will be the first to say, anybody elected, appointed in this room, if you have information of anybody within this structure of government that you believe committed a felony, I see at least 3 majors of Tallahassee Police Department sitting right over here. Please take that information immediately to law enforcement, which is the appropriate body to handle such information. That's all I have to say. Let's move on. Ms. Jackson, we are going to get through this ethics package, and I know that we're going to have an incredible ethics package. If you are not staying for the rest of the meeting, please, if you wouldn't mind, be quiet as you exit so that we can move forward with the business at hand. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Commission.
We may
Can you hear me?
let him.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could keep it down so we can keep moving, that'd be great. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Commission, at its annual retreat in January 2019, made the reinforcing of ethical culture a priority as laid out in this agenda item. The Commission began to modify Commission policies, including increasing the notice radius regarding its proposed land use decisions to 1,000 feet and including renters, having Commission meetings in the community in addition to having them at City Hall, removing the 30-minute limitation regarding speaking on agenda items, and providing for the opportunity to speak both prior to the agenda item and at the time the item specifically came before the City Commission. Further, the Commission modified the city's organizational values, as has been previously spoken of by our city manager, including honor public trust through ethical behavior and lead with integrity at every level. Upon the receipt of the Independent Ethics Board's policy and ordinance recommendations in April 2019, the City Commission directed the City Attorney to review the ordinance recommendations and policy recommendations with input from other appointed officials to provide recommendations to this Commission. The Commission further added to its calendar this additional special ethics workshop in light of the elevated importance of this priority. In providing recommendations, I have reviewed the ordinances of other jurisdictions in order to discern best practices, made recommendations that attempt to avoid clear redundancy of state law, recognize the substantial resources of the State Ethics Commission and its demonstration over the last 2 years of its ability to effectively resolve ethics complaints, and attempted to supplement the recommendations of the Independent Ethics Board in light of the recent Department of Justice investigation and results. Additionally, in making recommendations, we have attempted to reflect the twin purposes specified in the State Ethics Code to which all city employees and officials are subject. First, the public interest requires that a standard of conduct regarding conflict of interest be established because it is essential that public officials be independent and impartial and that a public office not be used for private gain. Secondly, it is essential further, as stated by the legislature, that government attracts citizens best qualified to serve. In order to do this, the law against conflict of interest must be designed so as not to unnecessarily or unreasonably impede the recruitment and retention by the government of those best qualified to serve. With this in mind, along with my deputy, Amy Toman, we will review those matters recommended by the Independent Ethics Board. The Independent Ethics Board laid out what they have requested to be a more expansive coverage of those who work for the government and those who are public officials in its coverage locally. They requested that they have jurisdiction over, of course, elected and appointed officials, which they already have, employees, those who are required to file financial disclosure forms, Form 1, and they also requested that they cover procurement employees. They further wanted to cover more of the employees than what I am recommending, but if you look above, you will see what I have recommended. This would include the elected and appointed officials, of course, and then employees who are required to file financial disclosure. This recommendation was made because it is an objective way to determine those who have a great deal of discretion and authority regarding decisions which are of a high level in the city government, as well as it includes those who have the ability to make purchases in excess of $20,000. We also, in agreement with the Independent Ethics Board, have recommended that you include procurement employees in your coverage. These are defined as anyone essentially who touches procurement. This would include those who sit on committees, who make selections regarding those who will provide services to the city or provide products, and for any procurement which has a value in excess of $10,000 within 12 months. So that provision is in agreement with the recommendation of the Independent Ethics Board, including Form 1 and appointed officials as well.
So do you want to go, give me some guidance here on how you want to handle it today.
We can do it either way. We can just go through. I can try to quickly hit them, and you can raise matters that you believe are of concern later.
Why don't we go point by point so that we can have discussion, and if there's no conversation, then we just move forward. So the end product today will be brought back for ratification at the City Commission meeting? Is that?
What will happen is I will place it in an ordinance for introduction. Again, there will be an opportunity at that time to give additional comment. We can change it if you don't agree with the content of the ordinance and introduction, then it will be brought back for public hearing.
Okay. So proposed ordinance number 1 or this proposed item, you are in agreement with the Ethics Board's recommendation?
No, I have selected, their recommendation was somewhat more expansive than this one. Mm-hmm. They would include, they would also include boards, which I have recommended that boards not be included. And my reasoning for this is we have never had any problems with the citizens who sit on our boards. I believe that would be a hindrance to recruitment for service, and they are already subject. Many of the statutory boards are already subject to the jurisdiction of the State Ethics Commission.
Open it up for comment.
I have a question regarding
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
With the procurement employees, or we're saying anyone who comes together to do the evaluation, even because sometimes, as I understand, we have evaluators who come from the county side as well as the city side. They would be subject to this as well?
Well, if you're not under the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board could not determine it. So, for example, if we had someone on the committee who was a county employee or a citizen who sat on the board, they would not have jurisdiction because that jurisdiction has not been given by the charter.
So some would be and some would not be?
City employees and city officials.
Right.
Now, I agree with the Ethics Board recommendation to include all boards under the ethics policy. There will be a separate conversation about financial disclosure, which I have pivoted my position on that in regards to the boards, but I don't see a problem including volunteer boards under the ethics policy, even though it is also in state law. It's my own personal opinion. Open it up. Conversation. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Having served on the Planning Commission,
yes, ma'am.
We all had to file a financial disclosure Form 1, and I'm assuming that's the case for all other board members. Is that sufficient? I mean, are we saying that every person who serves on a board, wherever they are, and I forgot how many boards we have, would be under the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board?
That is what is being proposed by the Independent Ethics Board. Everyone, whether advisory, statutory, any member of a board or a council would be subject to the Independent Ethics Board.
And what is the impetus for that? And you may not have that answer. Maybe someone else does. Why are we reaching so far out to the boards instead of focusing on where the real decisions are people on advisory boards are just providing advice that's not always taken.
That's
So
correct.
Why would we then extend that out that far? I just want some clarity on why all the way to the board level when their decisions are not always accepted.
Well, I certainly cannot speak for why the Independent Ethics Board decided to make the recommendation, but my recommendation is not to include them, and primarily it's because they still are accountable for the ethical decisions. It simply would be something that would be taken before the state board, and I think putting an additional, perhaps, consideration, maybe stumbling block, something else to have to comply with before citizens might be a hindrance to getting those to serve. And as I said, I'm not aware of any concerns, and I know we do a great job of trying to advise the citizens and inform them as to what their responsibilities are ethically, as well as to provide them information regarding sunshine and public records law. So they do feel comfortable calling my office when they have questions.
Dr. Bryant?
Yes, I'm not opposed to broadening the scope, but I would like someone since we have people here from the board, to answer Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Yeah, Mr. Reed or the chairman, I'll let y'all decide if or you can tag team, either way, whatever's appropriate.
Yeah, preferably someone from the board, from the IEB, be the attorney or the chair, be great.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
That recommendation came from the board in an attempt to bring the ethics code in compliance with the city charter, which says the board shall have jurisdiction over, I'm not sure I can quote it off the top of my head, I believe it says councils and subcommittees thereof. It says councils, commissions, and subcommittees thereof in the charter. That's a rough quote. It does not limit that in any way. So when it says the board shall have jurisdiction over the officials of the city, employees, both paid and unpaid, and boards, commissions, or committees thereof. We were trying to comply with that language in the charter.
Thank you.
I'd to speak to that issue if I could.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Jackson.
There are, there's what's called personal jurisdiction, and there's what's called subject matter jurisdiction. Certainly, the charter speaks very clearly that the board has jurisdiction over boards. It has jurisdiction over officials, employees paid and unpaid. But it is this commission that decides subject matter jurisdiction, and that you do that by the ordinance you pass. They can give recommendations to you, but you set really the subject matter jurisdiction, so taking those people and applying particular ordinances to them. So certainly, if you pass an ordinance that had to do with misuse of position, you would decide of those people who would be subject locally to the board. So there are two forms of jurisdiction. There's personal over the parties, which certainly you have by way of the charter, but you as a commission decide what subject matter will apply to those persons.
Okay. So right now, it sounds like, let me see if I can bring this in and move forward. And let's go ahead and do a motion on this, since it seems to be some differences of opinions. One is jurisdiction as presented versus expanded jurisdiction that covers the boards. That's how I see the arguments right now. Commissioner Matlow.
I guess a third argument, if we're going to expand the boards, I think we should just take the recommended language and expand to all employees and have everybody under that ship. I don't think it would be fair for a board member to be subject to a policy that actual employees aren't. But I also think the proposal covers a lot of individuals that I think can touch a procurement and can be subject to those sorts of things. So I could go either way. I think the charter language speaks the most strongly to me, and I would support covering everybody. But if there's a compromise position, I think it would be the city attorney's recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, I would move the recommendation of our city attorney.
City attorney's recommendation has been moved by the mayor pro tem. Is there a second to the recommendation?
Second.
Been seconded. Any further comment? I'm going to respectfully vote against the motion on the table because I accept expanded jurisdiction as required, as suggested by the Ethics Board, However, I will vote for the overall package in the end. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Aye. So I believe it passes on a 3-2 vote. I'm just making sure I got it. Dr. Bryant, you
I was
were
a no.
You were no, and I was a no. Dr. Bryant and the mayor were Commissioner Bryant and the mayor were both no's. So the attorney's recommendation moves forward.
Thank
Okay, next policy.
Okay, so the next policy deals with the prohibition of gifts. The Independent Ethics Board desires a no-gift policy, meaning that no threshold would be permitted in terms of an acceptance of a gift from a lobbyist, from a vendor, or from a lessee of city property. My recommendation is to provide, as does the Independent Ethics Board, that no one would be permitted to solicit a gift from those entities, but to maintain the $100 aggregate threshold, which is stricter than the state ethics code, because the state ethics code has a $100 limit per vendor or per lobbyist, whereas the city has adopted for covered individuals and aggregates in a calendar year. So from one vendor, it couldn't be more than $100.
All right. Open it up for discussion. Motion.
Move the attorney's recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Attorney's recommendation has been made by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second to the motion on the table? Dies for lack of second. Is there another motion? Discussion.
Discussion.
Okay.
I guess
Williams-Cox.
I need more clarification on what this actually means. Are we saying that the recommendation is to leave it at $100 as the amount of the gift, and our option there is to do that or to go to a zero gift?
Or you could go somewhere between. I mean, you could also maybe not have the limit at 100. You could have the limit at 50.
Okay. So my question is this, because we report anything that we report all values, and especially anything over $100. My question is, right now what we receive are tickets to represent the city at functions.
That is not covered by this.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be sure, because if that was going to be the case, I was going to need a raise to buy tickets to represent the city at all these functions that we go to. Okay.
The example that I gave would be something like, for example, what we do know is the city has a very, very expansive list of vendors. Mm-hmm. Some of these are mom and pop operations. Some of them are big box stores. And so sometimes if you have a zero gift policy, what you could end up with is unintended consequences. For example, you have a situation where you have a manager or an owner of a store, or an office supply store, and you have a city employee who is a covered individual, and perhaps their children are in the same grade school together, and the family's invited to a party, and then the city employee goes, and the city employee has a meal. Well, that person is an owner of a business of which the city is a vendor. In that way, that person could have possibly, in all likelihood did, if they ate and didn't pay for that meal, violated the ethics code. I don't think that is what the ethics board or this commission is interested in trying to achieve. I think what you're trying to achieve is to prevent gain at the expense of the public. And so in this way, if you have somewhat of a limitation, a reasonable limitation, then you don't get in these difficult circumstances which aren't intended.
I'm calling City Manager, Commissioner Williams-Cox. Are you done? City Manager for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, and I really want to underscore what the city attorney just said. Personally, my desire would be that this commission, it would indicate clearly that we don't accept gifts from those that we do business with or that lobbies us. That's what you have told us consistently. The city attorney, the city auditor, and treasurer clerk and I have all met about this, and I think it's just a matter of how you enact it. But the spirit of what you're telling us and the outcome of this have to be very clear, that we don't take gifts. You all have told us that you're not taking a gift, but we don't want to set up a system that's fallible, that may be unworkable. And I think the city attorney's crafting of this is appropriate, but with the message that we don't take gifts from those that we're doing business with or lobbying. I just wanted the opportunity to say that to not lose clarity.
Before I call in for comment, let me weigh in real quick that I am very much strongly in favor of the Ethics Board recommendation. I campaigned on a zero gift policy. I think it's important that we create clear lines prohibiting both solicitation and acceptance of gifts. I do differ slightly with the recommendation, and I think that we should stick with the gift definition as described in state statute. So as that definition changes, our definition remains the same so it doesn't create confusion between the two. But I do believe and respectfully disagree with the recommendations from management and the attorney that we should just have a zero gift policy. Commissioner Matlow and then the Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure, thank you. Is the gift language in the Ethics Board proposal mirrors the state proposal right now, the gift language?
Not quite. They have left off some provisions in terms of, under the state law, you have 90 days to pay for it. If, for example, you get yourself in a situation where you didn't realize you took a gift and you find out you did, you have 90 days under the state law to pay that so that you don't have to, you would not have violated the code. So.
Okay. I'll move that we adopt a zero gift policy in accordance with the gift definitions by state law.
I'll second that. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm done.
Any other? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0 in favor of a zero gift law. Madam Attorney.
Thank you. The next provision deals with misuse of position, prohibits a covered employee from, my recommendation would be corruptly using their position or a city resource to secure a special benefit. The commission, the Independent Ethics Board, would like to use knew or should have known that it would secure a special benefit. The reason that I selected or desired to retain the corruptly use is because of the very extensive amount of case law defining corruptly that is in the jurisprudence. I think it would be a great guidance to the Independent Ethics Board as they make decisions. It's very important. Sometimes you may intend to do something. Clearly, it's intentional, but it might not be inconsistent with the performance of your public duty. And I gave you the example last time of the Blackburn versus State case in which a county commissioner had a document drafted that was used during their commission duties to explain a position, and that position involved trash collection. And it was used by that commissioner, but then when that commissioner ran for office, also used the same paper. And the court determined that the paper was written in support of his public duties, but it also had an incidental benefit when he ran for office. And the court determined that the use of that document was not inconsistent with those duties. And so I think having that kind of case law and that kind of guidance would assist this board in coming to its conclusions. And for that reason, I have recommended maintaining the word corruptly in terms of the mens rea that would be used in making the decision.
Open it up for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, just a question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
And is it my understanding, Madam Attorney, that depending on how it's interpreted, the corruptly standard is stronger than the known or should have known?
It can be, yes.
Any further comment? Commissioner Bryant, and then we'll come back to Commissioner Matlow.
You talked about case law regarding the corruptly. Is there case law and definitions of known or should have known? Is it as definitive as
It is not as definitive. What you find, though, is that what you use is sort of this reasonable person standard. And, I think it's just hard to come to that. And because there is this body of case law that gives good guidance, I would recommend that we stick with this.
Any further comment? Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I talked a lot about known or should have known on the campaign trail, and I feel I need to stick to that position. I understand the arguments made by the city attorney, but if they're doing it in Palm Beach County, I think we've heard this debate at kind of all levels of government of what language is stronger in state laws as well. And I think what I've heard more than most as far as ethics, tightening our ethics laws is this specific issue. It's covering how many people we cover, what language we use, and then the subpoena authority. So I'll support, and I'll make a motion to use to adopt a misuse of public position, but with the know or should have known standard.
I'll second that motion. Any further comment? Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I just want to make sure as we go forward that we're looking at this in as objective manner as possible, and that we're not being tainted by recent events that have occurred. Because if we do that, we're doing a disservice to folks who will come through this way in the future who are ethical individuals. I just want to say that because I just kind of feel that cloud that because we've had some recent examples of what has occurred, I don't like to legislate to the exception, but to the overall, to make sure that we're doing all that we can to prevent it, but also not to punish anyone coming through because someone else did something incorrectly. So I just wanted to say that.
Agree. Yes.
Overall.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the city attorney has made an excellent point in terms of the case law that exists. The known and should have known is a much grayer area. And so it would give more direct guidance, I think, to the ethics board to use the corruptly. It is what is in state statute currently. The legislature has not chosen to change that language. And again, like the question I asked, is it based on the interpretation? And I've seen interpretations both ways, that the corruptly is more definitive than known or should have known, and others have taken the opposite opinion. And so I think given what the attorney is recommending, I would support her recommendation.
Okay. Dr. Bryant.
Yes,
Commissioner Bryant.
let me ask again someone from the board who made the recommendation who can explain, given what we've just heard regarding what is stricter, or because I thought we were trying to be as strict as we could be with regard to what is it, corruptly or known or should have known. Could you explain to me your position as to why that?
Mr. Reed, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, yes. Ms. Jackson's correct about the case law. The term corruptly is defined in Chapter 112 of Florida statute. Within that definition is the term wrongful intent, which is then defined in the case law, which is the Blackburn, most recently Robinson. The standard in those cases, I did bring it with me today. I'll pull it straight from the case, is that an appellant acted with wrongful intent, that is, that she acted with reasonable notice that her conduct was inconsistent with the proper performance of her public duties and would be a violation of the law or the code of ethics in state statute. So it's similar to the known or should have known, but it is a little, I think, weaker than the corruptly. So I think corruptly is a little weaker than the known or should known if you're looking at it from the prosecution side.
Sure, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
May I just follow
yeah,
up
Commissioner
with one
Bryant, you
question?
still have the floor, and then I'll come to you, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
So if that's the case, and we're trying to be as strict as we can, or at least have the focus narrowed, help me understand why the recommendation is for known or should have known.
It's just a lower burden of proof for the prosecution.
Oh.
Easier to find guilty.
Mr. Mayor.
If I may.
Sure, Mr. Chairman.
In 2010, the statewide grand jury.
No, I'm just asking.
Looked at the term corruptly.
Public.
The idea of misuse of public position is contained in two places in Florida statutes. One is in the civil provisions of Chapter 112 related to ethics. The other is in the criminal provisions of Chapter 838 related to criminal misuse of public position. The statewide grand jury in 2010, looking at the criminal provision, said that using the term corruptly created too high a burden and too difficult a position for the prosecutor. The legislature subsequently changed the criminal provision related to misuse of public position. The legislature has not changed the word corruptly in Chapter 112. It's been proposed a couple of times, but according to the statewide grand jury, the concept of having to prove corruptly means basically crawling into somebody's head, and as a prosecutor, being able to show what they believed at the time they did it, which of course is a difficult thing to prove. So the board went with the different standard of knowingly and intentionally, thinking that that would be something that we might actually be able to prosecute.
That was going to be my question. How does one prove that someone knew or should have known?
I think, as Ms. Jackson properly stated, it would be a reasonable person standard.
A reasonable person standard?
Yes.
How do you prove someone's reasonable? I mean, you see where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
It's subjective to someone making that call without a state law or case law to support it.
Mr. Reed, if I could jump in too. Mm-hmm. So my interpretation of this, Commissioner Williams-Cox, is there's certain things that we know just flat out are wrong. You don't take money, okay? There are certain things that would technically be a gray area because we're all elected lay people, right? And so we need some training. I think this is a great opportunity, Mr. Reed, for the Ethics Board and for the Commission, and especially the City Attorney's Office, to work together. You provide ethics training to the elected officials and to the appointed officials. So when we talk about known or should have known, based on what? Well, based on the training that you receive as an elected official and on a common person. What's the term, Mr. Reed? Reasonable person. I am comfortable with those scenarios, to be honest with you.
I'm comfortable for myself, but we're talking about covering a whole bunch of folk.
Sure.
Other than,
the janitor, for instance.
Right.
If the janitor, by chance, is covered by this, not to say that they're not educated, but how would they know that they should have known that this box of candy that they received was whatever?
Mr. Mayor, if I may
Mr. Reed.
respond. First and foremost, we're dealing issues where there's a material fact in dispute. Right. The issue is removed from our jurisdiction and referred to the Division of Administrative Hearing, where it's going to be heard by an independent finder of fact. That independent finder of fact, under the first DCA case, Latham v. Florida Commission on Ethics, is going to be held to a clear and convincing standard in order to make that determination whether they violated the reasonable person standard. So it's not a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not, but it's not beyond a reasonable doubt like you would have in a criminal case. Mm-hmm. But it's somewhere in the middle. So there is a heightened burden imposed on the finder of fact in order to make that reasonable standard. So as far as the concern that you just raised, I think if a janitor took a box of Milk Duds from Barney Bishop and didn't think twice about it, I think that would be an issue that the person would say, okay, with a reasonable person standard, would they meet that clear and convincing evidence standard? And I think that's where you have that protection.
Okay, and I'm not belaboring the point. I just want to be clear because I like to think things all the way through to the end because we can have some, as we said, some unintended consequences that will cost taxpayers a lot of money, legislating or representing or in court over a little or nothing. I'm okay with the new known or should have known. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But I'm just thinking about down the line how far this goes and what does that mean and how do we prove it and all of those things. I'm okay with it. I just want to think it all the way through the end.
Motion on the table is for new or should have known language as the standard. We're still on commissioner comment. See no more? Call for a vote for the motion on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Madam Attorney.
Thank you. Disclosure of offers of influence. The Independent Ethics Board proposes language requiring covered individuals to report to the city attorney and board if someone is offered a bribe. neither the city attorney nor the board has jurisdiction over third parties. So my thought is that it would do no good to report it to us other than we would do what we do now, which is to tell them to take it to law enforcement. So my recommendation is not to adopt this particular provision. Allegations regarding bribery should be taken to law enforcement so that they can properly be investigated and handled.
I agree with the city attorney's recommendation on this one. It is outside the jurisdiction of the ethics board in the city. The appropriate response is to take it directly to law enforcement because it's criminal, not civil.
I'd move the attorney's recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Probably moved by the mayor pro tem. I will second that. Or Commissioner Williams-Cox seconds it. Any further comment? Yes, sir.
I think we have a duty to report, and I think anybody on this board will report any wrongdoing that they see.
Sure.
We're all mandatory reports.
To law enforcement.
Absolutely. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Madam Attorney.
On penalties, I am recommending that we retain the up to $1,000 violation for any violation of the ethics code. I am in agreement in recommending that we move forward regarding allowing or permitting restitution, the determination of harm, and making sure that person is restored, or even if that is the city. Regarding investigative costs, if someone files a frivolous complaint against a covered individual, that the board has requested to be able to self-initiate that an order for the payment of the person who filed the frivolous complaint would be required to pay the investigative costs, and I think that this is reasonable. I am not recommending that the board be authorized to determine the extent of any benefit that a wrongful act may have resulted in. I think that is very speculative. I think that it also could expose the board itself to litigation, and that is a matter that is beyond, I think, what should be beyond the jurisdiction of the board to consider. However, the restitution component, I think, is reasonable and should be added. The board is also requesting that it be permitted to issue what they have called remedial orders. And essentially what would be happening is that they would conduct essentially a hearing and develop findings of fact and conclusion of law on matters that they may perhaps not have jurisdiction on. I am not recommending that the commission approve this as an ordinance. They already requested in 2018 to be permitted to do what are called letters of instruction, right, which they do provide, and they review those at their board meetings and send those letters to people over whom they may not have been given jurisdiction. So that is the guidance that they do provide.
Explain one more time the difference between the remedial order, which is being requested, versus the written letters of instruction, which they currently have the authority.
Right, and that authority was given them at the letters of instruction at their request in 2018. Usually, it may be something that comes up. They feel it would be beneficial to give a person over whom they may not have jurisdiction guidance on a particular matter. And they have the authority to do that, and they have done that in the past. What they are now requesting is additionally to be able to issue what they call a remedial order. And they say that this remedial order will provide findings of fact and conclusions of law. So essentially, it is an order of the board. Because it is an order of the board, it should not be given to someone over whom they don't have jurisdiction. And this could result from such giving them the ability or power to do this.
Is there any way to grant them the remedial order, but limited to, obviously, jurisdiction?
Well, yes, you can, but essentially that's the complaint, right? Because they have the jurisdiction, they can make a determination.
Right.
So
say at the board.
I'd move the attorney's recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
And let me just make sure we understand the attorney's recommendation is along with the ethics board proposed increase in fine amounts require restitution and investigative costs.
They did not increase the fine. I just wanted to recognize that the fine would stay the same, which is at up to $1,000. Other jurisdictions do have a fine of, most of them have up to $500. Ours is much stronger, and I wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of that.
Okay, sounds good. Any further comment? There's a motion on the table for the Madam Attorney's recommendation. Is there a second to the motion?
I have a question.
Motion dies for lack of second. We got a question. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Okay. I'm looking at our comparison that I have here as well. And one of the things that I remember in our briefing as well is that part of this is authorizing the $1,000, up to $1,000 or not to exceed. But in your recommendation, it is to make that $500.
Well, it's the commission's will. If you would like to make it $500, reduce it, because as I said, other jurisdictions, those in Palm Beach County as well as City of Jacksonville, they have the fines up to $500. So that is an option. Currently in our code, we have $1,000. In light of the fact, and we had this discussion, in light of the fact that we are recognizing that we may be giving them authority to provide for restitution, you may consider keeping the fine at up to $500, recognizing that they now will have the ability to order restitution, if you pass that.
Comments? Questions? I'm in favor of increasing it to $1,000, up to $1,000, including also restitution and investigative costs.
I am too.
Me too.
Okay, so
Commissioner Williams-Cox. I'm sorry?
it actually is already $1,000, so we're just maintaining
it as is.
Yes.
Leave it as is, yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Williams-Cox, you want to make that?
I make the motion that we do leave it at as is.
And include required restitution, investigative costs as well.
Required restitution.
Wasn't that what my motion would have done?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Correct. So you can second this motion. Mayor Pro Tem seconds it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, put you down as an aye? Aye. Aye. Okay. Passes 5-0.
Major call.
Madam Attorney.
So the Independent Ethics Board has requested an ordinance that provides that the use of non-public information, information that others would not have access to, would not be permitted by by those who are covered by the Ethics Code, covered individuals. And I think that is a reasonable position, and certainly it is essentially state law, but it is very important and that we not misuse information. That
I agree with the Ethics Board's recommendation, and Madam Attorney concurs. Any other comment?
Move recommendation.
It's been probably moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the rest of the commission. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 4-0 with the Mayor Pro Tem out of chambers. Madam Attorney.
This provision is essentially my recommendation in response to the request by the Independent Ethics Board to have a provision that prohibits the doing of business by a covered individual with their own agency or the City of Tallahassee. It's a provision that we know very well. I think you often contact me to ask me legal advice and opinions regarding your outside employment or businesses. And I don't think that is a provision that has been an issue for the commission or the employees who readily also seek legal opinion and advice from my office. However, we did have a concern, as you are well aware, as a result of the Department of Justice prosecution and the result therefrom. In an attempt to address those issues, I have recommended a provision entitled Deprivation of Honest Services, which would prohibit covered individuals from engaging in a scheme or an artifice in an attempt to deprive citizens of honest services, essentially a bribe. So I'm recommending that as an alternative for your consideration.
So, quick question. Honest services is a criminal act versus this is a civil body. Walk us through your recommendation, please.
So this is essentially would be a violation of the city code. It could be pursued civilly, or it could be pursued for
so it has a civil element to it.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Comment.
I would like to hear from the board as to what does this accomplish what they were their recommendation. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we've given you a workout.
Questions are always appreciated, ma'am. Honest services is found in federal law in 18 U.S.C. 1346. It was, in enforcing it, subject to a lot of complaints that it was unconstitutionally vague. Because if you just say honest services, that can be taken to mean a lot of different things. In 2010, the United States Supreme Court read a limiting principle into the federal law. Now, again, without seeing specific words here in terms of what you would be looking at for honest services, I can't tell you exactly how it would apply. But the United States Supreme Court, in a case called Skilling v. U.S., in order to avoid invalidating the statute as unconstitutionally vague, said that honest services may extend only to offer offenders who, in violation of a fiduciary duty, participate in bribery or kickback schemes. So they limited it to criminal prosecutions. I would tell you so far, when the board has received issues, primarily through the hotline, that have involved anything that looked like it might conceivably be a criminal prosecution, those have all been turned over to law enforcement or to the state attorney. I do not know what the board would do if we got an ethics complaint that was a clear criminal violation also, but I suspect that we would turn it over to law enforcement and not handle it as a civil matter under ethics.
Mr. Chairman, help me out here. So, in the past or present, say one of us has a relationship with Florida State University, okay, does consulting with Florida State. City, once in a while, will partner with Florida State on a particular program or something. Does that fall under this jurisdiction? Is that a conflict?
It is unlikely that you would be, to use the court's words, a violation of a fiduciary duty, participation in bribery or kickback schemes. Okay. So I guess you could create some complex shell corporation situation, or hypothetical, where maybe somebody was getting a kickback. I'm here to tell you that I'm pretty certain, I know the folks at FSU, I'm pretty certain they would identify that and stop it before it ever got off the ground, as I think with the city. I can't off the top of my head come up with a hypothetical. I'm sure we could sit down and come up with one, but it would be where everybody was clearly, knowingly breaking the rules to do that and intending to create a situation that was a bribe or a kickback, which again would be a criminal law violation.
Sure. And the responsibility is on our shoulders as well, that as issues come up for votes, to check with the city attorney to make sure that there is not a conflict or an appearance of a conflict. And if there is, to make sure it's properly disclosed, forms are filled out, recusal from the vote, and leaving the chambers if a vote takes place. Excuse me, I just wanted to double check to make sure that we're not walking a fine line. Everybody has outside business that I'm aware of, and don't want to do anything that puts us in jeopardy where we are right now. Comments? Questions?
So question, Mr. Mayor. So how does the recommendation that's coming from city attorney comport with what we just heard?
Madam Attorney.
I'm still confused.
So what I was attempting to do is, in light of the experiences we've had over the last couple of years, give the city, if it desired, and offer a way or a mechanism to bring those matters to the forefront. It would be more akin to a violation of the city code. And, for example, if we could pursue it, or it might be something that would be tacked on to something that a law enforcement agency would do. So it's just another option.
So does it accomplish what the board is attempting to accomplish in addition to some other provisions? I guess that's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, it gives you you mean the board?
Your recommendation and what the board presented.
Well, the ethics board was attempting to deal with business relationships that you may have with so that you would prevent business relationships with the government. I think that's something that's very clear to you, and you already know that you should not engage in business with this government or have an employment that is conflicting. And so I did not really see the need for that. But if what they really were trying to get at is what has been going on in the last what went on in the last couple of years, then this gives you an avenue to deal with that.
Right. I think that it's fine. It's appropriate. What I'm trying to met. And we'll use you as an example. Lively does a great job with vocational tech, okay? So if we wanted to start a new program with Lively College, that doesn't put Curtis in an uncomfortable situation. Now, if Curtis is getting $250,000 behind the curtain, that's a different
That's
issue.
a problem.
But you see where we're going with this, and I think we're all on the same page. That just because he has a place of employment and we enter into some type of a contract for a program or something like that, that does not put him in an uncomfortable position.
Well, it'd have to be a determination of what if there was a conflict.
You would go through the process, and if there was a conflict, then you...
But wouldn't that, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but wouldn't that have to inure to my personal benefit in order for it to be a conflict?
Correct.
Which obviously it wouldn't because I'm paid by the Leon County School District in that example.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we would go through the process as individuals because the responsibility is on our shoulders, double check, see if we have a conflict or a perceived conflict. And if we do, we just declare it and recuse ourselves from the vote. But it's important for us to go through that process.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'd move the recommendation of the attorney, Mr. Mayor.
Of the attorney or of the, okay. The motion on the table is for the recommendation of the attorney.
Second.
Been properly seconded by Commissioner Matlow. Any further comment?
Final question, I hope.
And I'm going to come to you as well, Madam Attorney, to clarify the difference between what you're recommending and the Ethics Board is recommending. Okay.
That was my question.
Okay.
So I am not recommending that you adopt a provision that is essentially the same as the state ethics code. The state ethics code prohibits you from engaging in a conflicting relationship with the agency of which you are an official. So you could that's a matter that is already covered in the ethics code. There are substantial laws, substantial provisions, substantial rules. I think that is very well covered by the State Ethics Commission, and I am not recommending that you adopt that and incorporate it into your code. It is not contained in the codes of, I believe it's not in the Palm Beach Code, nor is it in the Jacksonville Code.
Is there anything that's being provided by the Ethics Board in their recommendation that goes above and beyond the State Ethics Code that would make a difference, or would this just be simply adopting the exact same language that's in the State Code?
It appears to me to be the exact same language that is in the State Code.
It is? Okay. Look, if we adopt it, it's the exact same language in state code. If we don't adopt it, we still fall under state code. Right. Motion on the table is the city attorney's recommendation not to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Madam Attorney.
Just a point of clarification. You're not adopting the provision, but the deprivation of honest services.
Your recommendation.
In unison.
Oh, no.
Okay.
All right. Subpoena authority. The Independent Ethics Board has requested subpoena authority. I think it is reasonable for the Ethics Board to have subpoena authority over those persons over whom it has jurisdiction. I would not recommend the grant of subpoena authority over others. However, I believe it's the Palm Beach County Code, they do permit the board, their ethics board, to go to the court and request a subpoena if they believe they need it, provided they can show the relevance of the need to their work. So I think that would be a reasonable position.
So let me make sure I understand this, that the Ethics Board recommendation is for subpoena power, and what you're saying is that, yes, it is totally appropriate for subpoena power over those that they have jurisdiction, and if it's outside jurisdiction, then they need to go to the court. To the court.
Of competent jurisdiction.
Excellent.
Yes.
Any comment? Motion?
I'd move this attorney's recommendation, Mr.
Properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Mayor. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Madam Attorney.
Lobbyist registration. The management and the monitoring of lobbyist registration primarily falls on the treasurer clerk. I believe what happened with this provision, it states also that it is to be done by the ethics officer. I believe that is a remnant of that was adopted prior to our ethics code, our current ethics code, and our current ethics commission, the approval of the ethics commission by referendum. So what I would recommend, as opposed to including the independent ethics board in the monitoring, is to leave it with the treasurer clerk to monitor the lobbyist registration. The independent ethics board has no charter jurisdiction over lobbyists. It can make recommendations to you regarding lobbying and lobbying ordinances, but it has no charter jurisdiction over third parties. So I would recommend that stay with the treasurer clerk only. And then they have also recommended what are called step penalties for repetitive violations. I think that is reasonable and appropriate. However, I would recommend that you start at $500, then move to $1,000 for a second violation, $1,500 for a third, and then suspension for a fourth violation.
Excellent. So quick question. Walk me through exactly what the responsibilities, Mr. Cook, over lobbyist registration that you have. I mean, they have to come, they have to declare, they have to pay their fee, they have to fill out the necessary paperwork to say, yes, I am a registered lobbyist for the City of Tallahassee.
Yes, sir, and they have continuing reporting responsibilities, both on a regular basis and then at such time as they may have changes in the principals with their firm who are representing that lobbyist firm, or when they leave that role. So the registration is on an annual basis, and so that they it's not a permanent or standing. It's an annual registration, and we do not frequently, but periodically, we have had individuals contact us and say, "I believe there may be a problem. Somebody may not have registered. It may even be a question from a commission office." To date, anytime we've run into those circumstances and followed up with the lobbyist firms, they have immediately complied. I think we're probably in an environment where those who are in the business of lobbying are familiar with this sort of thing, and so as soon as they're aware of a requirement, they meet it. That's the general process we follow.
In your mind, what does joint jurisdiction look like? How does this work?
Communication. Communication would be the only difference. I mean, I think from our standpoint, it's a matter of you need a point of contact. We're that point of contact, and I think that works well. I think joint jurisdiction could sound confusing. Where do I go? Who do I register with? But I think if I'm happy to have it remain in my office and everybody who has one point of contact.
Mr. Reed, Mr. Chairman, joint jurisdiction, what does that look like?
When we discussed this issue, what we had talked about was we understood how things work. We understand that primarily rests with the treasurer clerk. We were looking at it from the point of someone who wants to raise the problem of an unregistered lobbyist as an ethics concern, could raise it with him or could raise it with us. We were not trying to get in the business of registering people to lobby. We wanted to provide a second point of complaint processing, if you will, so that if for whatever reason someone didn't want to go to the city, they could come to us. We would then obviously work with the treasurer clerk on trying to rectify that.
That's fine by me.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think the main objective of everyone involved from the ethics board to the city commission to staff is to ensure that lobbyists do comply. And so I think individuals coming to where they're comfortable to make sure that they can provide a report is fine. In that kind of scenario, I would see them contacting us and letting us know. So I think the main thing is to not have silos of so that you have a lack of information. But as long as there's communication, I think that's fine.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
One of the concerns that I've heard in this area is that folks are coming in calling themselves consultants and not lobbyists. So if that is the case, I don't know how many lobbyists we have registered. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but we want to close that door and make sure that folks who are truly lobbyists are registered and that they're penalized if they're not. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here. But I heard clearly that there are those who are skirting under by calling themselves consultants. Well,
I think a significant step there is when anyone hears that sort of thing to contact us and let us know. who that is and what that circumstance is so we can follow up and see what definition they meet.
And one of the things that I know is happening in our area, I want to give a shout out to Ms. Angie Whitaker. She is kind of our watchdog, that if we're meeting with someone or she hears we're meeting with someone, she brings us the form to make sure that if they say they're registered lobbyists, that we complete the paperwork. So we want to thank her and need more like her to make sure that we stay out of trouble that way, because we don't know unless you ask. And so whatever we need to do to make sure that that doesn't go unnoticed.
Understood, and we can work to make sure that we have procedures in place to enforce these things that we're talking about. I think the important thing is to get the rules in place, and like everything else, City Commission sets the policy and a standard, and in this case, an ordinance, and then we'll establish the policies and procedures to make sure those things happen.
Okay.
I have the Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Bryant, and Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that was going to be my point, that once we establish the ordinance, then the implementing language would suggest how that relationship works. But I think we ought to definitely be clear that it is not an oversight and monitoring function of the board, and that future boards understand that based on the language in the ordinance.
Commissioner Bryant.
Let me thank Commissioner Williams-Cox first for complimenting my aide, which definitely keeps me in line. But then there is absolutely no reason then why we would not have that. I think you agreed to this, Jim, the board being able to receive that as is noted in their recommendation. Is that right?
Yeah, as I understand what was just presented, you'd continue to have my office serve as the point of registration and maintenance of records and follow up with lobbyists, but that the joint piece that was being discussed was when someone has a complaint, where do they go to express a concern? And they could express that to my office or to the board.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Matlow. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been here 11 months, and I've been affected by this unregistered lobbyist and brought it to the treasurer clerk's opinion. I think we should take a strong stance on it. If you're getting paid to influence this government, you're a lobbyist, and you should register no matter what the issue are. And I would support the strongest penalties, because I would like Tallahassee to have the reputation of, you don't want to go there, not registered to lobby. I don't care if it's 10,000, 20,000. I would go all the way up, because I don't think we should tolerate it. And it's happened from people professionally in the industry that should know better, and we shouldn't stand for that. So I'd like to keep the recommendations of the ethics board of the value amounts of the fines.
For the record, state those value amounts.
It is that 1,000 for the first violation.
$1,500.
$1,500, $500 each additionally, and the fourth one suspended.
Yeah. Yep. 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 suspension. Yep. Okay, motion on the table is for the ethics board recommendation with the original penalties as recommended for $1,000, $1,500, and $2,000. I'm hearing your motion is for 1,000, 15, and 2,000.
Actually, in the IEB's recommendation, it was 1,000 for the first, 2,500 for the second, 5,000 for the third.
I think that's what you.
That's it, right?
Okay, for the ethics board recommendation, that's clarified. Thank you. Is there a second to the motion on the table?
Second.
All right, probably moved in second. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. All right, Madam Attorney.
The next recommendation comes from my office and is simply to provide for the appellate review specifically in the ordinance.
I think we're all in agreement with this, with the ethics board as well.
Move the attorney's recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Probably moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the mayor. No further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Madam Attorney.
The next recommendation also comes from my office. It is to have a statute of limitations that no action on a complaint can be filed more than 2 years after the violation, unless, of course, the discovery of the violation is prevented by fraud. This is contained in both the City of Jacksonville and the City of Palm Beach County ordinances.
Okay.
Move the attorney's recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Been properly moved by the Mayor Pro
Makes
Tem.
sense.
I will second it. This is language that's included in other communities' ethics code.
Just for comment, and I think at the state level, there's a 5-year statute of limitations.
That is correct.
Okay. I'd be in favor of a 5-year statute of limitations.
All right, 5 years, 2 years, 5 years. Discussion.
You just have to keep in mind that, with time, memories do fade, documents do disappear, and that's why the reason for the 2-year statute of limitations. Unless, of course, it's been hidden, then you have the opportunity.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment for a 5-year statute of limitation, or would you like to stay at 2 years?
I'd like to stay at 2, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I do think I'm going to withdraw my second because I'm comfortable with the 5-year. Is there anybody that would like to second a 2-year statute of limitation? Okay. So we're going to say the motion fails on the table. Is there a new motion? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there a new motion on the table for a 5-year statute of limitation mirroring state statute?
So moved.
Okay. And I will second that motion. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Madam Attorney.
Thank you. Okay, so this provision is a recommendation also in my office, and we are attempting to deal with a situation where ethics issues are placed on the hotline. The recommendation is that when calls come in on the ethics hotline, obviously the Independent Ethics Board has the authority to handle the intake for all calls. And so once those calls come in, if they're of an ethical nature, they should be handled by the Ethics Board. Our recommendation that any other calls should be forwarded to the appropriate appointed official for handling and to take immediate action if necessary. Again, also, if we are recommending that an ordinance be placed or be adopted that applies the confidentiality to calls that are received on the hotline that are of an ethical nature, so that the confidentiality can be afforded from the beginning to the end, as is done with any type of ethics complaint.
Wonderful. Strongly support this recommendation. Madam Attorney, thank you. Is there any comment?
I have a question.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, then
Okay.
we'll come back to Commissioner Matlow.
Currently, calls that come in on the hotline, who makes the determination whether it's an ethics call or not?
Well, because the charter provides that the Ethics Board is supposed to manage the hotline, they would be making the call.
And what happens to the calls that are considered not to be? Are they referred to someone else?
Right now, they should be being referred to someone else because it's not their jurisdiction to handle. It'll be appointed official.
Who gets it right now? Anybody?
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Largely, I would say I do. If the ethics officer believes it to be within the scope of management, she would bring that to me, share it with me. Now, I believe she still follows through with her board with that a complaint's been received and kind of what she's done with it. But I think from time to time, if she believes it to be within the management purview, she would bring it to me to follow up on.
Okay.
Excellent. Commissioner Matlow.
I really like this recommendation. I think, it's imperative that we don't embarrass people and let anonymous phone calls, get out before there's actually an investigation. I also think it's also important that we allow for anonymous complaints, because I think we get to real facts by going down those trails sometimes. So I'll support the recommendation. And just to be clear, so if somebody calls with an anonymous complaint to the hotline, it's a covered individual. That would happen. That would be taken to the Ethics Board, but not public unless they decide to move forward on that accusation.
Yes, they actually manage it, so they would handle it because it is an ethics call.
Okay.
In a confidential manner.
Excellent.
Recommendation probably moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the mayor. Seeing any further comment? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Attorney.
The next item is the full financial disclosure, or Form 6, as is currently known for elected officials. This provision is currently being proposed by the Florida Ethics Commission to the Florida Legislature for 2020. It would, if it was done here before that time, or if not passed, we would not, of course, call it a Form 6. We would just be filings a document that contained the matters that are on a Form 6. The city already has its own separate financial disclosure form or disclosure form. That disclosure form requires that each of the elected officials disclose business relationships with vendors and employees, service on corporate and nonprofit boards, and land ownership both in Florida and outside of Florida. If you decided that we're not at this time ready to move forward on a Form 6, you could, as an alternative, establish a link, and I've spoken to the city manager about this, a link from the city's website to the Supervisor of Elections Form 1 so that that information could be more easily accessible to citizens. So it's a consideration. I believe the mayor has something he wants to say on that.
No, I'm fully in favor of the Form 6 full financial disclosure. Even if it does not pass state law that requires municipalities to file such, we can still file them with the treasurer clerk, who can keep them on file, as I did this year, a matter of fact. As Mayor of Tallahassee, I think this is a necessary step forward, and I'll be more than happy to second a motion in favor of full financial disclosure Form 6.
I'd make that motion, Mayor, and I've had to do it both ways. It's easier at the city level, but I've had to do it both ways, and I think it's important that we do that and be as transparent as possible with our finances and the sources of our income. So I would be in favor of that.
Thank you. Properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Mayor. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. Madam Attorney.
We need direction on this matter as well. A vendor disclosure of campaign contributions. We were able to find this in one city, the city of Coral Gables, and they did require that companies that were vendors of the city and who made campaign contributions to a campaign committee or to the campaign of someone running for office, that they would file a disclosure. There are some, although we couldn't find a whole lot of cases on point, there are some cases that indicate it may have potential implications for First Amendment expression because it could possibly place a chilling effect on the giving of campaign contributions. And then our recommendation as an alternative, again, would be to establish a link to the Supervisor of Elections site for campaign contributions to city candidates. And I believe Commissioner Matlow may have something to say on this one.
Okay, before we go there, a couple of questions, and then Commissioner Matlow, I'll come to you next. My main concern with this is the responsibility that's placed on the shoulders of the elected or the candidate without any knowledge of what did or did not happen by somebody who happens to work for a vendor that is donating. And so help clarify that for me. For instance, if Commissioner Williams-Cox gets a campaign donation.
It really is on the vendor. It would be a violation of the code as to that vendor as opposed to the person running for office.
Okay. It's my understanding, and hopefully mistakenly so, then the responsibility does not fall, or shared responsibility fall on the elected official or candidate. How can we be held accountable for someone else's action so we will not be held accountable?
No, you are not responsible. It is really on the city vendor to file the disclosure form.
So if you have a vendor that has 9 employees that contribute to a campaign, it is the vendor's responsibility to make sure that they report every single, it's the responsibility of the individual who contributes to report that they work for a vendor.
It really involves how you define the ordinance, but on the ordinance in Coral Gables, it's the principal, the vendor.
The principal, okay.
So it would be the owner of the business.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, good questions. I think, that sums up my position. And I mean, this is just, this is all already in the public record. This is just increased transparency, put it in one place. I think we've made good strides on our website and listing vendors and listing lobbyists so we can show the public, we're being straightforward. We have nothing to hide here. It all is. And I think this is just one more step towards saying, we're a transparent city. So I would make a motion to adopt a vendor disclosure policy in line with Coral Gables.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Matlow to move forward with the recommendation. Is there a second to the motion? Dies without a second. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I had a question. So let's say I work for XYZ Corporation, and as a private individual outside of my employment, I want to support a candidate. So then my boss has to report. I have to go to my boss and say, I made a contribution to this candidate.
No,
So that's
it would be It would be the principal, the owner of the business. If that owner made a contribution, they would have to file financial disclosure, not the employees of the vendor.
Okay.
Unless they owned it also.
Comment. We have no motion on the table.
Okay.
Madam Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I guess this was a part of the conversation I think we had during the briefing. Currently, anyone who wants to know who's contributing to campaigns can go to supervisor of elections and find that, which is why we're suggesting just put the link on the city site so they can go there.
Which we have done, by the way, since the April 29th meeting.
Okay, so how is this any different? Because if you really want to know who's contributing, whether it's Aunt Jane or Sally Sue or whoever, you can go and see that information already. What are we accomplishing here, other than additional paperwork for someone to keep up with, because it's already in the public sphere?
Well, I think that's why it would be helpful, and I think someone just said that it actually is already on the city website. I think having the link, it gives additional transparency, but I think it could be accomplished the same purpose, yes, by having the link to show who has made a campaign contribution to a particular candidate.
Any further comment? Any further motions?
I would move the attorney's recommendation.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem has moved the attorney's recommendation. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes. The attorney's recommendation passes 5-0. Madam Attorney.
That is all I have at the moment. With direction, I can prepare an ordinance for your consideration in line with the motions and the approvals that you have made today.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I'd like
Commissioner Matlow.
I'd like to reconsider my very first vote on covered individuals. I didn't realize that there was more support for a broader coverage, so I'd like to reconsider that vote and make a motion to cover all individuals as identified by the proposals of the Independent Ethics Board.
Hold on just a second.
What was that vote?
Which it was a 3-2 vote that passed in support of the attorney's recommendation. Commissioner Matlow, I'm looking at the clerk. Walk us through.
Well, there would have to be a reconsideration of the vote.
Just for
for informational purposes.
Yeah, for the vote on covered individuals, Commissioner Richardson moved the city attorney's recommendation. That passed 3-2 with Commissioners Bryant and Mayor Daley opposed.
Correct.
That was the vote that was taken, if that was what you're trying to clarify.
Correct. Correct. So you want to, first we'd have to take up a motion to reconsider, and then you want to have a new vote on the covered individuals who would be subject to ethics code.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow makes a motion to reconsider, and who is my parliamentarian? Is that a supermajority? Or is that a simple majority?
Vote. Simple majority.
Okay, so there is a motion to reconsider Section 2-3 of the Ethics Code defining covered individuals who will be subject to ethics code. Made by Commissioner Matlow. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. Okay, so the motion to reconsider has been made by by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the mayor. All those in favor to reconsider signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, passes 4-1 to reconsider. Commissioner Matlow, you are recognized for a motion.
Sure, just in light of conversation and referencing janitors and that sort of thing, and the support to cover boards as well. I think if we do one, we should do all, and I guess we didn't really get to make that point earlier, so I'd make a motion that we make all city employees as well as boards covered individuals.
All right, so one more time. That is... Restate your motion. I'm sorry, sir.
That we make all city employees as well as volunteer boards, as stated in the charter, covered individuals.
And that was the original motion that was made.
I'm not even clear if that's what the the Independent Ethics Board recommendation was.
Yes, because the motion to reconsider should be the exact same motion that was previously made, not a motion to reconsider for a different motion to be made.
Correct.
So what we would be voting on right now was the motion that passed on a 3-2 vote that was made previously.
Which passed.
Which did pass, and you were on the affirmative, Commissioner Matlow, which means if we take up the exact same motion, and if all votes remain the same, it would fail on a 2-3 vote.
Because Commissioner Matlow changed his vote.
Correct. Motion to reconsider to take up the exact same motion. So, Mr. Clerk, why don't you read into the record what was that motion that we are now reconsidering?
I'm looking at the city attorney because I believe it was
We
her
get this
recommendation. I want to be sure we use her language and.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Madam
that's fine.
Attorney, yeah.
So with the motion to reconsider, they will be reconsidering the item that was on the table, which was your recommendation.
Right.
So I want to be sure you provide the language for the commission so that they know exactly what they're considering.
Mr. Clerk, someone's taking minutes,
Commissioner
right?
Williams-Cox.
Someone's taking minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am. The recording secretary is doing just that, and everything's recorded. So we.
Okay. Yeah. I do believe that she could do it, but word for word should come from the minutes.
I don't believe the minutes have the word for word because the motion as it was presented was, I move the city attorney's recommendation.
Correct.
So there was nothing stated here at the table that provided those words, and that's why I'm pointing to her for
And the city attorney's recommendation was not amended, I believe, when it was presented.
It was discussed, but not amended.
All right. So the motion on the table, now to be reconsidered, is the city attorney's recommendation, unamended. All those in favor
I thought she was going to read it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. I apologize.
So my recommendation is that covered individual be elected and appointed officials, all employees who are required to file financial disclosure Form 1, and all procurement employees as has been defined by the Independent Ethics Board.
And the original vote, Mr. Clerk, if you want to read how that came out by roll call.
The original vote passed 3-2 in support. Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Matlow, Commissioner Williams-Cox, originally opposed, Commissioner Bryant, and Mayor Daley.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Of what?
The motion on the table, which is the city attorney's recommendation for the
covered individuals.
Defining covered individuals. The difference is it's the ethics board definition, which is an expanded definition of covered individuals, and the city attorney's recommendation of definition of covered individuals. So all those in favor of the city attorney's recommendation for covered individuals, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And it fails on a 2-3 vote. Okay. Are we all clear? Mr. Clerk,
Yes, sir.
You're good.
I'm
Madam
clear.
Attorney, you're good.
Nothing has passed.
On the vote.
Yes, on the vote, yes.
Okay. Failed. 2, 3.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Just a second. Just a second. Okay. Commissioner Bryant?
So at this moment, nothing has passed. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct. Nothing has been passed. Is there another motion while we are on this particular section for covered individuals under the Ethics Code? I would be in favor of the Ethics Board recommendation with expanded definition.
So moved.
Probably moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the mayor. Any further discussion?
Well, what is the expanded?
Sure. Madam Attorney?
I'll let Amy do
The Independent Ethics Board's definition includes public officials, which are broadly defined to include elected officials, their aides, appointed officials, and individuals appointed to, and this is a quote, any advisory, quasi-judicial, or any other board of the city, state, or any other regional, local, or corporate entity. Wow. Beyond that, it's the same. It then includes employees and board members, also employees and board members who are already required to file Form 1, and then the procurement employees.
Right.
So the expansion is the very broad expansion of board members as well as aides, appointed, those definitions.
And if you recall, colleagues, part of the argument that was made earlier was that the city charter already addresses this in regards to jurisdiction, and that for 5 years it has not been codified for whatever reason. So they are bringing the recommendation back to us because it's referenced in the city charter. Take that for what it's worth, Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that's the recommended definition for covered individuals, but the proposal includes jurisdiction over all city officials as included in the city charter.
Go ahead. Some of the provisions apply to covered of individuals and all. Some just apply to all. Some just apply to covered of individuals. Right. So,
but what we would be voting on today is as recommended, the full jurisdiction, and then covered individuals we can define as just this. But the other expanded jurisdiction, as recommended, is that?
No.
Well, it really just depends on which particular provision you are looking at the time. I think what we have tried to do is to make it more, my recommendation was to make it more expansive, but it didn't cover all employees.
Right.
And it didn't cover boards, and it didn't cover your aides. Because generally speaking, aides are employees, they are not officials. So that was the basis for my recommendation.
Mm. So the thing to consider is, do you want to include electeds, the appointeds, procurement? Do you want to include everybody, every single employee? Do you want to include every employee and boards and jurisdictions? You can also craft your own motion to include who you want as well. And I'm tired. Remind me, do we have a motion on the table now?
There isn't.
No motion on the table. Okay, Commissioner Bryant.
I'm not getting ready to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I thought there was a motion.
We do have a motion on the table.
Commissioner Matlow made the motion.
And I seconded it.
And you
yes.
seconded it.
And that was for the Ethics Board recommendation of expanded jurisdiction over all employees. And again, my interpretation is that it's already in the charter. It's been there for 5 years, never been codified. I don't have a problem with it, but it's the will of the board, so we'll go from there. Commissioner Bryant, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I also understood that there were exceptions that are in place and would be in place. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of any exceptions. You're currently formulating what the policy of this board this commission will be, and whatever it would be an ordinance, so it would apply throughout the city. So you are doing that right now.
So if I could follow up, just as a point of clarification. So if we had an employee who accepted a bottle of water when they were out doing their electric work, they would be in violation. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
A question again. And so these provisions are already in the city charter, as the mayor indicated?
No, what I tried to explain before is that the charter sets forth the folks or the people or parties over whom this commission or the ethics board can have jurisdiction. Okay. You, through your ordinances, define to who will these ordinances apply to. Sometimes they apply to elected and appointed officials. Sometimes they could apply to those who file Form 1. the bulk of them would apply to covered individuals. And so the covered individuals, how you define covered individuals is very important.
Correct.
So in an effort to be more expansive, but recognizing that there are exceptions and there are folks that you might not want to be subject to the local ethics board, but still they're subject to the state ethics board.
Right.
I tried to craft a recommendation that covered people who had very important authority in this government, who make very important decisions, who control a lot of money. And so having those people be covered individuals seemed reasonable. And those people, as I recommended, would have been the elected and appointed officials, correct, those who file Form 1s, and those who engage in the procurement process, which is quite expansive considering the numerous procurements that we do, and the fact that you are covering essentially everyone who touches a procurement. That is a large number of people.
And I don't think the intent was the lineman who takes a bottle of water from a resident who's concerned about their health.
There you go. So that's your coverage right now. Is everyone all the way down?
No, I'm baffled. Yeah. I really, if I had to vote right now, I couldn't, because I think the goal is for decision makers, yes, to be held accountable, right, and responsible, not people who are doing the day-to-day work to be held to the same standard as an elected official. I think that's not what they signed up for. We signed up for that, and I accept that. But I don't think that people out there cleaning the streets and, doing whatever they're doing, cleaning the building, they didn't sign up for that. They're just trying to make a living. And to throw a net that would then entrap them to possibly be caught in something that they're not even aware of because they took a bottle of water, they took some milk duds, that now they're going to be possibly lose their job and be drug out to be prosecuted for an ethics violation. I think we need to be a little bit more humane in our consideration of that. I know what I signed up for, but the folks you saw in here today, they signed up to do the job, and if they decided they didn't want to do this job, then so we might have to do it ourselves. So I think we need to think about that, about the covered employees. What's the essence? What are we, Mr. Chair? Who are we trying to make sure we cover, for lack of a better term? Who are we trying to make sure we touch with this?
Mr. Chairman.
We spent a fair amount of time talking about this exact issue.
Okay.
And in our proposal, you will see that there are, in the current ethics code and in what you have passed, what we ultimately will see, there are a number of different standards for different types of ethics violations. When we're done, there may be 10 or 12 of them. Misuse of position, misuse of public information. We looked at each one and decided what group of people that ought to apply to. So some of our proposals applied to all city employees and officials. Some of our proposals applied to city officials, procurement employees, and Form 1 filers. Mm-hmm. Some of our proposals would have reached out to cover some people who are on boards and councils. We looked at them on a proposal-by-proposal basis, an ethics provision-by-provision basis. Well, you do have a definition of covered individual that we used as a shorthand, but we did not apply every one of our suggested provisions to covered individuals. So, for instance, on misuse of position, clearly it ought to apply to city officials. But likewise, you might have an administrative assistant in your office who is very aware that the city is going through some relatively obscure or secret discussions about buying some land. That person ought not to be able to go out to a spouse or relative and say, hey, buy that land now because you can make a bunch of money. Correct. So that would be a lower level employee or a lower paid employee. Right. But I think you have to look on a provision-by-provision basis. There are clearly some of the things we recommended that ought not to apply to everyone. Mm-hmm. And there were other things that we recommended where we thought they could potentially be applied to everyone who works in the city.
So should we then take this and do that ranking one by one about who's going to be included? Because if we do this, it's throwing the blanket out for everybody.
That was the
it is
only
not-
way that we could make our recommendation and feel comfortable with it. Again, there were some things, you have volunteer boards. We don't want to put it as a volunteer board. We don't want to put a chilling effect on who serves on boards.
Right.
But by the same token, there are some boards that make some decisions related to spending. We thought they ought to be covered
They
on
don't
some
make
of the ethics
decisions, they give
provisions,
advice.
not all of them. So yes, we looked on a provision by provision basis, which makes the whole discussion, I understand, more complicated. But for our board, at least, that was the only way that we could get to where we could make what we thought were fair recommendations.
And so do you have something that documents that those that you consider the different coverage of employees?
In our recommendations, you will see, for instance, misuse. I think we applied to all city employees and city officials.
Yeah,
Other provisions we applied to different groups, smaller.
Yeah, I guess I see that, but when we talk about covered individuals without it being applied to certain provisions, you see what I'm saying? We're throwing out a net.
Yes.
And then we start picking people out of the net when you start going to the different levels. I have a problem with that.
Let me jump in and help out the chairman real quick. Reading their language that they submitted. Definition of covered individuals. The Independent Ethics Board has proposed moving all the definitions for terms used throughout the Ethics Code into one section at the beginning of the code, and this is consistent with other areas of the city code. The IEB's proposed amendment defines covered individuals to include public officials, which in turn are broadly defined to include elected officials and their aides, appointed officials, and individuals appointed to any advisory, quasi-judicial, or any other board of the city, state, or any other region, local, or corporate entity. Employees and board members required by statute to file financial disclosure, and procurement employees defined to include any city employee who has participated in the previous 12 months in a procurement, the cost of which exceeds $10,000. So even by the Ethics Board definition, we're not talking about the lineman per se, unless they have the authority to purchase over $10,000 worth of line equipment. Correct, Mr. Chair?
We're more granular. We did not propose that definition of covered individual be used in every one of the ethics provisions. So again, under the misuse provision, we did not use the term covered individual. We used a broader scope of coverage. So we have covered individual there as a shorthand, and I think maybe half of our recommended ethics provisions apply to covered individuals. The others apply to different groups, larger or smaller.
Right. And so, Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
and
sir.
so that
Mayor
will
Pro
be
Tem.
determined on a case-by-case basis. How are employees supposed to know who's covered by what if they're going to make a complaint to the ethics board?
Again, it was a matter of each individual potential ethics violation. We looked at who it ought to apply to. So there were some of them that are violations that would only occur at a very high level. Mm-hmm. So those would apply to city officials, purchasing employees, a narrower group. There are other things that you might do at a very broad level that might be a violation that could be arguably committed by someone who is just a city employee out doing their job. So somebody who does some type of, so I think somebody mentioned a lineman. Mm-hmm. So a lineman, while he or she is at somebody's house, takes $100 to go in the house and do some additional electrical work. Maybe that should be a violation and apply more broadly than just city commissioners and purchasing employees. So that's, again, where we looked on an issue-by-issue basis because we couldn't find a definition that we thought worked for each of the types of ethics violations.
Sure. All right, just to restate, the motion on the table right now is made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the mayor, is to move forward with the Ethics Board's recommendation of covered individuals. Let me remind you that the definition of covered individuals does not include, by definition of covered individuals, every employee of the city of Tallahassee. It's your electeds in our aides. It is the appointeds, and it is the those that are in procurement or have a role where they can authorize purchases over $10,000 or more. Correct?
And those filing Form 1.
Yeah.
And those
Form
filing
one.
Form 1s. Yep.
And that's what this motion does.
That is the position of
The
the
ethics-
ethics board, yes.
That's what this motion does.
Okay. What's the difference between what the ethics board recommended and your recommendation?
So I did not include your aides, and I did not include the boards. And I only and it's a little bit confusing as to how they have it written when they say Form 1, if they're saying all employees, and then folks who file Form 1, or are they saying employees who file Form 1? So maybe a point of clarification on that.
For those provisions, and again, off the top of my head, I think it's about half of our recommendations that we set out to apply to covered individuals. Remember, that definition's just in the definition section, is not used throughout all of our recommendations. But we were attempting to capture anybody who would file a Form 1.
Just Form 1, though, not all employees.
Again, it depends on the provision. For misuse, we did not use the term covered individual. In misuse, we said all city officials and city employees, period.
I was speaking to your definition of covered individual, not when you don't use covered individual.
Catherine, come on, give it down.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
I don't have it.
Mr. Reed, thank you.
Yeah, just to reiterate, the purpose of the definition of covered individuals was to be narrower. For instance, in misuse, we cover all employees.
Right.
For gifts, we cover covered individuals. We didn't intend to cover all employees for the gift prohibition. As far as the question posed by the city attorney, yes, it would be any employee that files a Form 1.
So that's clarified. So they don't mean all employees in the definition of a covered individual. They mean employees who file Form 1.
Correct. Any follow-up questions, Commissioner Williams-Cox?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, last point of clarification, and I realized we didn't, as we adopted these ordinances today, we didn't really identify if it's all employees or covered individuals as we went along, so that may be something we make sure is consistent when we come back with the final draft. Obviously, we talked about a zero gift ban. What was recommended by the Independent Ethics Board was covered individuals. The city manager has indicated he'd like to have an internal policy that covers all individuals, but my interpretation of the zero gift ban was what was recommended by the Independent Ethics Board, so it would not relate to water bottles or milk duds or anything of the sort of our lower level employees. That's not my intent. It's not to punish somebody for doing something within the scope of their job and that incidental. And I don't think it's anybody's intent on the Ethics Board or in our city to go down those lines. And we talk about a reasonable standard. I think we're all getting to the same place. So, I mean, the motion is their jurisdiction, the jurisdiction over what is laid out in the charter, covered individuals being what is defined.
Correct. As seconded by me. Seeing no further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, Madam Attorney, have we reached the end?
Yes, we've reached the end of my presentation. If you want to go back through again, or we simply can act based on the votes that you have taken.
I don't think we need to walk through. Anybody need to walk through? I think we're good. We'll go to closing comments, and then we'll finish this out. Commissioner Bryant, any
closing comments? Well, let me just say that I think that what we've done today hopefully will let not just those who are on the ethics board, but our entire community know how much we're committed, really, to being not only an ethical commission, but an ethical city in what we do from day to day. And let me leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Williams-Cox, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I have my question is, I think this was said early on because there was some mention about the Inspector General's role moving in that direction. We're going to take that up at a later date, I think I heard. So we're not going to discuss it here today. I want to make sure we said that again before we left so that for those who are here and those who are listening, understand that that's going to happen at a later time. And I want to compliment the Independent Ethics Board. I did vote for this. I did meet with the concerned citizens, and I met with you as a candidate, and I met with you since. I am committed to doing what I believe is going to be a fair ethics policy that will take into consideration, though, acts of kindness that are extended to employees of the City of Tallahassee, as well as keeping all of us out of trouble. And I want to say that I hope we're doing this, and I believe we've done this to affect future activities, learning from our past, but not penalizing ethical people who are trying to do the right thing moving forward. And I know we have to codify it and put it in place because that's what you have to do sometimes, and I agree with that. So I'm on board with what we've done here today. I think that we all didn't get everything, but we got something, and it's a great step forward to move our city forward ethically.
Commissioner Matlow, comment.
I look forward to the Inspector General conversation and a conversation on further whistleblower protections. But we've done a lot of really good work here today. I think we didn't agree on everything, but I think the city can see that we all take ethics very seriously. We passed some really strong reforms, and we're moving in the right direction.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I voted for the ethics package when it came before the voters, and I believe then, as I believe now, that it was the right thing to do. It was something that we did prospectively. Peter and I talked about this when we met, because when this was passed, there was no corruption in the city of Tallahassee that it was based on.
Dr. Jackson, please, let's keep it down. We're wrapping up, okay?
It was a policy that was passed prospectively to prevent that kind of behavior from happening. And I think that's why the majority of the voters, almost 2/3, supported it. But what I've heard today in some comments troubles me, because there were comments made that we are known for corruption, or we tolerate corruption, that we have to reset the city's moral compass. And I think there is nothing further from the truth than that. I'm proud of what we've done today, because I think it sets a standard for all of us to have to live up to. But to say that this city and our employees are known for corruption, I take exception to that. I take exception to the fact that anyone would suggest we have to reset the city's moral compass because it is so out of whack that it has to be reset. I don't agree with that. And so I want this city to know, I want our employees to know that we are proud of the work that they do, that they come to work every day and do the job that they were hired to do morally, ethically, with integrity, and to say that the actions of one individual who is being handled appropriately in the appropriate venue paints the entire organization, I cannot agree with that. And I just wanted to bring that to our attention, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. This has been a long meeting. We've already been an hour and a half over, but it was an important meeting. And first of all, I want to thank my colleagues for hanging in there. We just passed the most significant ethics package reform since the inception of the Ethics Board. And I am very proud to work with each and every one of you in support of moving this forward. The next step is that the city attorney will bring this package to us for final ratification at our next city commission meeting.
It will not be the next one. We're going to try. We have to make sure our notice.
The December meeting. And as promised, we will pass formally the ethics reform package by the end of the year. We have taken a hard stance on zero gifts. We've taken a hard stance on full financial disclosure. We've expanded jurisdiction. We've put teeth into the language. I think that this is a package that we can all, as I have said from the beginning, we can all wrap our arms around, embrace, and be very, very proud of. A couple of recommendations before I go ahead for comment first.
I think we do have time to get it to you in November, and then with the final in December. The public.
Excellent. I want to take a second once again to recognize the chairman and Mr. Reed, general counsel for the Ethics Board, for your hard work today, helping us walk through a lot of these recommendations. I hope y'all are as pleased as we are with this final product, and it's going well. A couple of things that I believe are outside of the jurisdiction of the City Commission, but we'll be more than happy to offer up any and all of our assistants some things to consider, especially Mr. Reed. I'm looking at you as general counsel to possibly work in conjunction with the chairman to take forward. I'm very curious in your opinion of how we can help you make the Ethics Board more independent. We talk about this all the time, and if you have specific recommendations that we can take into consideration, please by all means feel free to send them our way for consideration, or if we can help you in any way, please let us know on what's appropriate and how we can move forward with that. I know y'all are currently considering taking action with an annual audit, and I think that's a great idea. It fits in with the policies of the city, and I think that's great. And anything that we can help you with on that front as well. I would also encourage y'all to take a look at City Policy 706, which is our personnel policy, and just to bring everything in line and streamline how we move forward together. There's probably some things that could help out quite a bit under our personnel policy. And then we took steps this evening in regards to the anonymous complaints and the confidentiality. I know one of the things that y'all are looking forward to working on as well as policies and procedures to address that as well. Certainly appreciate it. And of course, we look forward to engaging with you and talking about the Inspector General and the whistleblower protections that the auditor is going to bring back. And I also think that this starts a great new day with an incredible relationship. And today shows how the Ethics Board and the City Commission can work hand in hand to put together a great ethics pack. Look, if it was easy, we would have done this a while ago. But thank y'all, sincerely. Thank you. Without further ado, any final comment? We stand adjourned.